Chapter 2950. Confrontation. At this moment, all the cultivators of the human and foreign races followed MDA's gaze and landed on the young man. The young man had 2 scars on his face, and his gaze was calm. He sat cross-legged on a praying mat, unmoving like a mountain. Could it be that the merfolk elder thinks this person is the culprit? No way. This guy is just the lord of profound secrets. Is this MDA deliberately provoking us? Sauron's matter is just a lie fabricated by this old man. The surrounding people discussed animatedly, and their gazes toward MDA became unfriendly. Senki-in and Xiangpuyu both frowned. The moment they saw the young man with the scars, they also thought MDA was deliberately stirring up trouble. However, although the Phoenix people's second elder's gaze flickered, he didn't say anything to stop it. He knew the merfolk seal better than anyone else. Since MDA could sense the aura of the merfolk seal, it meant that the cultivator carrying the merfolk seal was nearby. MDA looked coldly at the young man in front of him and said somewhat hesitantly, "You have the aura of the merfolk seal on your body. You killed Sauron, right?" MDA was somewhat hesitant. The aura of the young man in front of him was too weak. He was just the lord of profound secrets. He suspected that his senses were wrong. Sauron was a merfolk genius with a special bloodline. If he was killed by a lord of creation powerhouse, he could still believe it. But in the end, it was just the lord of profound secrets. How could he dare to believe this? This result even made him doubt his life. However, he did indeed sense the aura of the merfolk seal on this person, which was why he asked this question. He knew that the aura of the merfolk seal definitely wasn't a fluke. There had to be a reason. Perhaps this person was related to Sauron's murderer. Zhuan looked calmly at MDA and said indifferently, "What do you think?" MDA narrowed his eyes and looked coldly at the young man in front of him. He was surprised that this person could be so calm. Ordinary lords of profound secrets would tremble in fear when facing a lord of creation powerhouse like him. The better ones would just pretend to be calm. However, he found that this person was terrifyingly calm, as if he didn't care about him. "What do you mean you think? I'm asking you a question." MDA's expression did not look too good. He no longer held back the aura in his body, completely suppressing the youth in front of him. However, the moment MDA's aura rushed out, it was scattered by another powerful aura. Moreover, this aura was much stronger than MDA's. The latter could not help but stagger and take a few steps back. He looked fearfully at the red-nosed old man behind Zhuan. The leader of the Yin and Yang divine sect, Xiaojin. Muda frowned slightly and continued, "Sect master, and I remember that this person isn't a disciple of your Yin and Yang divine sect, right?" "Now it is." And Xiaojin's eyes were cold, showing no signs of weakness. The reason why he suddenly erupted with his aura was not only because Zhuan had reached an agreement with him, but also because of MDA's words. He had also heard of the shark seal curse. Since this kid had the shark seal curse on him, it was very likely that Sauron had been killed by him. His guess was not baseless. Just now, when this young man defeated Chao Kongsheng with a single move, he knew that this young man's strength far surpassed Chao Kongsheng's. Adding on the fact that this young man had the shark seal curse on him, he knew that this young man might really have killed Sauron. Thinking of this, and Xiaojin looked at Zhuan in a new light. Sauron's strength was very terrifying, and he was definitely ranked among the top of the younger generation in the Great Desolate Heaven domain. Although he was still inferior to the top few monstrous geniuses in the Xian Mi Heavenly domain, it was enough to look down on the majority of the younger generation. If this young man really had the strength to kill Sauron, and Xiaojin was even more willing to cooperate with this young man and protect him. After all, a genius with such strength entering the door of darkness would increase the competitiveness of their Yin and Yang divine sect. MDA's expression was not good, but he did not speak. The leader of the Yin and Yang divine sect, and Xiaojin, was also an early-stage sky-piercing lord expert and was much stronger than him. He did not dare to challenge such an existence. For a moment, the atmosphere became subtle and awkward. Haha, Sect Master, and I still believe in MDA's character. He will not casually accuse others. How about this? In order to prove whether or not this person has the shark seal curse, why don't we use the method I just mentioned to verify it? The awkward atmosphere lasted for a while before the second elder of the Phoenix people laughed and walked forward to mediate. When the second elder of the Phoenix people arrived, MDA heaved a sigh of relief, but in Xiaojin's gaze became serious. This elder's cultivation was the same as his, at the early stage of sky-piercing lord, but his strength was much stronger than his. After all, he was a foreign race with the Phoenix bloodline and was blessed by the heavens. At the same time, Xiang Puyu and Senki Yin also came forward and curiously sized up Zhuowen. Both of them were early-stage sky-piercing lords, so they could naturally tell that this young man in front of them was in disguise. Especially Senki Yin, who frowned slightly. He felt that this young man gave him a familiar feeling. However, Senki Yin did not particularly care. Since this person had some relationship with Xiaojin, his background should not be low. Perhaps he had seen him in the Heaven and Earth Divine sect before. Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu were mainly curious about why this young man in front of them had the shark seal curse on him. Could it be that this young man had really killed Sauron? Of course, the two of them did not believe this conjecture at all, because it was just nonsense. They had both seen Sauron's strength. Even an early-stage creator might not be able to defeat him. This master of mystery was 2 major realms lower than a creator, and he was also from one of the 10 major races, the mermaid race. Wanting to kill Sauron 2 major realms above him was simply inconceivable, and Xiaojin frowned slightly. He did not expect the second elder of the Phoenix people to stand up for MDA. He did not fear MDA, but the second elder of the Phoenix people could not help but be apprehensive. This was a true expert. Sect master, and is my face not enough? The second elder of the Phoenix people said somewhat unhappily, and Xiaojin was in a difficult position. He guessed that this young man was very likely Sauron's murderer. If he let MDA confirm it, this young man would definitely be confirmed. At that time, it would be difficult for him to say anything. After all, he was in the wrong. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes revealed a nervous expression. She knew that Zhuowen was indeed Sauron's murderer. Since MDA was so sure, it meant that Sauron had done something to Zhuowen's body. Xing Xinglan's eyes revealed a hint of schadenfreude. Chapter 29:51. Verification. MDA sneered at Zhuowen and said, "Arbitrary? You have no proof? Let me tell you, our merfolk race is very sensitive to the shark seal curse. You do have this smell on you, and you still want to quibble? If you really aren't the murderer, you can let me verify it." Everyone looked at Zhuowen, obviously waiting to see how he would answer MDA. To be honest, most people didn't quite believe that this person was Sauron's murderer, including MDA himself and the 2 elders. If MDA hadn't sensed the shark seal curse on this person, he definitely wouldn't have suspected him. Now he planned to verify it. If this person really had the shark seal curse on him, then he would definitely take him away today and search his soul to see how he got hit by the shark seal curse. After all, this was only the Lord of Profound Secrets. The Heaven and Earth Divine sect definitely wouldn't place too much importance on such a cultivator. When the time came, he would at most pay a portion of the price. I can let you verify it, but if the verification results show that I'm not the murderer, does that mean you're deliberately framing me? Zhuowen asked. MDA was stunned. He didn't expect this cultivator to be so confident and even ask him a question. This was unexpected, so he was stunned. If the results show that I'm wrong, then I'll apologize to you when the time comes. MDA said indifferently. Apologize? Zhuowen sneered and didn't answer. What? That's not enough? MDA looked at the sneering Zhuowen in astonishment. Far from enough. If I don't have the shark seal curse on me, then I want you to kneel on the ground, kowtow 3 times and kowtow 9 times, call me grandfather, and then apologize. Apart from that, I want the spirit ring in your hand as an apology. Zhuowen said calmly. When these words came out, the surroundings were in an uproar, and they all looked at Zhuowen in astonishment. They clearly didn't expect this Lord of Profound Secrets cultivator to be so awesome. With such a low cultivation, he actually dared to challenge a master of creation like MDA. Wasn't this a blatant provocation? Everyone looked at MDA and found that the latter's expression wasn't very good. What? Didn't Elder MDA confirm that I'm a murderer? Now you're scared? Since he was scared, there was no need to prove it. Although my cultivation is not as good as yours, I am still a member of the Yin and Yang Divine sect. I'm not someone you can easily manipulate, Zhuowen said. MDA's lungs were about to explode from anger. He didn't expect this mere lord of profound secrets to be so arrogant, actually daring to negotiate terms with him. He was sure that this kid definitely had the shark seal curse on him. He was trying to provoke him to leave, but he wouldn't fall for it. If I've wronged you, I can agree to your condition. However, if I have not wronged you, you will have to come with me. Let me handle everything, MDA said. Sure, Zhuowen nodded. When Zhuowen agreed, and Xiaojin frowned slightly. He never expected that Zhuowen would actually agree to MDA's request to verify the mermaid seal. Was he courting death? Yao Xiangjuan's pretty face turned pale, and her delicate body trembled. She couldn't understand why Zhuowen would agree to this MDA. Rather, Xing Xinglan's gaze was dark, the corners of his mouth revealing a trace of a smile. He knew that this person was dead for sure. His IQ was really worrying to actually really agree to MDA. This matter needs others to testify. I feel that Sect Master Sun, Sect Master Xiang, and Sect Master and can be witnesses. No one could go back on their word, Zhuowen said solemnly. Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu naturally had no objections. Rather, it was in Xiaojin's expression that was not too good. But he also knew that since this Zhuowen agreed, it was impossible to go back on his word. He could only agree. Then I'll have Second Elder do it on my behalf. I hope that when the time comes, when the mermaid seal curse is activated on your body, don't rely on other powerhouses to act shamelessly, MDA said. You too. Let's begin now. Zhuowen said very freely. MDA did not talk nonsense either. He cut open his thumb and dripped a drop of bright-colored blood essence on the back of Zhuowen's hand. The method to verify whether or not a cultivator had the mermaid seal curse was very simple. It required the blood essence of a mermaid powerhouse to be smeared on the back of the cultivator's hand. If this cultivator really did have the mermaid seal curse in his body, there would inevitably be traces of the mermaid seal curse on the back of the cultivator's hand. If not, there would not be any. MDA's blood essence dripped on the back of Zhuowen's hand, and he stared at the back of Zhuowen's hand. At the same time, Xiang Piyu, Senki Yin, and Xiaojin, and the second elder of the Phoenix people, as well as the other surrounding cultivators, all curiously looked at the back of Zhuowen's hand, waiting for the results to appear. After about 10 breaths of time, MDA's blood essence fused with the back of Zhuowen's hand, and nothing else happened. MDA was dumbstruck. What was going on? He clearly felt the aura of the mermaid seal curse on this child's body. Why was it that when he used his own blood essence to verify it, there were no traces of the mermaid seal curse? Could it be that he had sensed wrongly? MDA did not believe in heresy and once again cut open his already healed thumb. Fresh blood flowed out and dripped onto the back of Zhuowen's hand. Another 10 breaths of time passed, and there were no traces of the mermaid seal curse on the back of Zhuowen's hand. MDA was stunned. He did not believe in heresy and continued to use his blood essence, but he was stopped by Zhuowen. Elder MDA, your blood is too fishy. There's no need to try again. If you continue, I'm afraid I won't be able to take it, Zhuowen said with a disgusted expression. Hearing this, Elder MDA almost spat out a mouthful of blood. This guy's too disgusting. Try again. MDA's breathing was rapid, and his eyes were about to turn red. Enough. And Xiaojin spoke, stopping MDA, and continued. Elder MDA, you can't do it more than 3 times. You've already tried twice, and there are no traces of the mermaid seal curse. That means there is no mermaid seal curse on Long Wen's body. If you still want to try again, do you think we're all idiots? The expression of the Phoenix people's second elder was also not very good, and he gave MDA a cold glance. Originally, He intervened in this matter because their Phoenix people were currently cooperating with the Merfolk race. The two races even had a marriage alliance. If not for the cooperation, he could not be bothered to care about this MDA's business. He originally thought that this was just a small matter, showing up a little. After MDA finished dealing with it, he did not need to do anything, and this MDA would owe him a favor. But he did not expect that he overreached himself now. Senki In and Xiang Puyu, the two people, also looked at MDA coldly. Although the two people did not know this scarred youth at all, they were all people of the same race after all. Their attitude toward other races was very consistent. The three great initial stage Heaven Ascension Lord powerhouses were all targeting him, making MDA's scalp tingle, and his expression was very ugly. He looked at the Phoenix people's second elder beside him. He knew that he could only rely on this Phoenix people's second elder now. The second elder coughed dryly and said with a faint smile, "Since it was MDA who made a mistake, then so be it. We won't disturb everyone anymore." Chapter 2952. Issue a challenge. I say, Elder MDA, what happened to your promise? You wrongly accused me, and now you plan to leave? An indifferent voice sounded, causing MDA's figure to pause. MDA didn't say anything. Instead, it was the Phoenix race's second elder who smiled faintly and said, "I say, human races junior, one must judge the situation and size up the situation. Don't push your luck too far. MDA was just joking with you." The moment the second elder of the Phoenix people said this, the surrounding human cultivators went into an uproar, their eyes spitting fire. This second elder of the Phoenix people was too shameless. MDA had clearly promised to kneel down and apologize to his grandfather, and even offered his spirit ring. Now, he was going back on his word. Did he still have any face? Senki In, Xiang Puyu, and Xiaojin's expressions weren't good. This was no longer a matter between Zhuan and MDA, but a conflict between the human race and the foreign race. If the three of them let the second elder of the Phoenix people take MDA away so openly, wouldn't it prove that the human cultivators were afraid of the foreign race? Second elder, this joke isn't funny. This MDA said it himself. Do you want to just let go like this? Senki In coldly snorted. What? Sect Master's son wants to fight with me over such a small matter? The second elder of the Phoenix people turned around and looked at Senki In with raging flames in his eyes. His fiery hair burst out, and the surrounding temperature rose sharply. It was exceptionally terrifying. Senki In's expression was fearful. He didn't think that the second elder of the Phoenix people would be so shameless. He actually didn't distinguish between right and wrong and planned to turn hostile. Sect Masterin, this person is from your Yin and Yang divine sect. You decide what to do. Senki In looked at Xiaojin behind him. Xiang Puyu stood to the side and remained silent, and Xiaojin frowned slightly. He knew that Senki In and Xiang Puyu were planning to push all the responsibility for this matter onto him. He sighed and looked at Zhuan. He secretly transmitted his voice. Long One, the strength of this second elder of the Phoenix people is very terrifying. Now, that MDA is unable to verify the shark's seal curse on your body. Let's just forget about it. The corners of Zhuo Wen's mouth curled up into a cold smile, yet he didn't answer in Xiaojin. Instead, he glanced at the surrounding human cultivators and said, "Everyone, this is indeed a private matter of mine, and it might have nothing to do with all of you. But have you ever thought about what would happen if the one who was wrongly accused today wasn't me, but anyone here? He's just an elder of an alien race. How dare he barge into our human camp and accuse human cultivators of his own accord? That's one thing, but after making a mistake, he even went back on his word. Not only did he not apologize, he even acted as if nothing had happened. Do you think that's fair? If it were you, would you be able to bear it? Or do you think we human beings should always be inferior to the non-human kind?" Zhuan's voice was getting louder and louder. The surrounding human cultivators all stood up in unison. Their eyes shone with an unprecedented light. MDA's actions just now had already aroused everyone's dissatisfaction and indignation. Now, Zhuan's words were like a fuse that ignited a bomb, igniting everyone's emotions. The enmity between the human race and the non-human kind had been accumulating for a long time. Although they had temporarily formed an alliance, there were still some small conflicts and conflicts in the dark. However, the matter was not blown out of proportion, so both sides did not say anything. But now, MDA had publicly accused a human cultivator. Moreover, after making a mistake, he even abandoned his apology and previous promise. He was simply a scum who looked down on the human race. The Phoenix people's second elder and MDA looked at the many human cultivators behind them blocking their path. Their expressions immediately became unsightly. While the human cultivators were blocking the Phoenix people's second elder and MDA, the non-humankind camp also stood up and released their terrifying aura without holding back. Sect Master Sun, Sect Master Xiang, and Sect Master In, are you human cultivators planning to break our alliance and declare war on us? The Phoenix people's second elder said with a cold gaze. Senki In was silent. He did not expect that youth to incite everyone. At this moment, if he came out to stop them, he would definitely be misunderstood. He would not take the blame for this. Xiang Puyu and Xiaojin had also turned mute. They simply did not answer the question of the Phoenix people's second elder. Second elder, we have never declared war on you non-humankind. We have always hoped to cooperate with you, but you are not sincere. This MDA had a bet with Long One. In the end, MDA lost. Instead, he did not even apologize. Not to mention, he did not even hand over his spirit ring. Do you really think we human cultivators are easy to bully? And Xiaojin's eyes flickered as he coldly looked at the Phoenix people's second elder. Senki In and Xiang Puyu were still silent. It seemed that they did not want to get involved in this matter. The Phoenix people's second elder was so angry that he laughed. Sect Masterin, it seems that you really don't understand the situation. You want to openly oppose us for a mere trash of the Lord of Profound Secrets? Yes, Sect Masterin, this child is only the Lord of Profound Secrets. To us, he is just an ant. There is no need for you to protect him like this. How about this? I will take this child away. My mere folk race will give you enough compensation. MDA, who was standing beside the Phoenix people's second elder, also hurriedly replied, and Xiaojin was silent. He looked at Zhuowen and began to hesitate. Although Zhuowen had a cooperative relationship with him, he was still not a member of the Yin and Yang Divine sect. Now that he had offended the Phoenix people's second elder for this child, it seemed that the gains did not make up for the losses. After in Xiaojin's silence, MDA cackled and looked at Zhuowen. His eyes were full of pride and disdain. He really did not take this Lord of Profound Secret seriously. In his eyes, this was just a piece of trash. He felt that in Xiaojin knew the pros and cons. It definitely would not oppose a terrifying expert like the Phoenix people's second elder for this child. The instant in Xiaojin fell silent, Zhuowen suddenly walked out of the crowd and came in front of MDA and the Phoenix people's second elder. I say, Elder MDA, what will it take for you to apologize to me and hand over your spirit ring? Zhuowen said coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. This MDA was really too shameless. Zhuowen's killing intent rose in his heart. MDA also saw the killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes, but he didn't care. After all, in his eyes, this was just a piece of trash belonging to the Lord of Profound Secrets. So what if he wanted to kill him? He was no match for him at all. You want me to apologize and hand over my spirit ring? Dream on, unless you can defeat me in a direct confrontation. Haha, a piece of trash belonging to the Lord of Profound Secrets like you can't even compare to a single finger of mine, MDA sneered. As soon as MDA's words came out, the human cultivators were all furious. This MDA was simply making things difficult for others. MDA was an early-stage Lord of Creation, while Zhuowen was just the Lord of Profound Secrets. He actually had the face to say such shameless words. It was really too shameless. What? You don't dare? Scared? If you're scared, then don't grumble in front of me. A piece of trash like you has no right to accept my apology. My apology will only be given to cultivators stronger than me, MDA said arrogantly, raising his head. Then let's fight. Chapter 2953. Disdain. Zhuan's voice was very calm, like the surface of a deep well without any ripples. However, these words were like a stone that had fallen into the water's surface, causing dense ripples. Everyone was in an uproar. Sun Qin, Xiang Puyu, and Shao Jin, the three magnates of the human clan, also looked at Zhuan strangely, especially in Shao Jin, whose face didn't look good. Although he knew that Zhuan's strength was indeed extraordinary, he was still just the Lord of Mystery. The difference between him and the Lord of Creation was too great. If Zhuan really was Sauron's murderer, he might still be able to tangle with MDA. However, MDA had already proven that he wasn't Sauron's killer, so Shao Jin didn't think he would be MDA's match. If the two of them fought, Zhuan would undoubtedly die. Moreover, even if Sauron really was killed, Shao Jin still didn't think highly of him. Sauron was only a peak Lord of Creation. Although he had a special bloodline, his battle prowess was extraordinary. If it was an ordinary early-stage Lord of Creation cultivator, they might not necessarily be Sauron's match. However, MDA was also an elder of the merfolk race, and his bloodline wasn't weak either. Sauron was still slightly inferior to MDA. You mean you want to challenge MDA? The second elder of the Phoenix people looked at Zhuan in surprise. He didn't understand. How could a mere human like the Lord of Mystery have the guts to challenge a third-step Dao validation expert? Moreover, he was an early-stage Lord of Creation expert at the second tier of the third step. Moreover, he was from a foreign race with a very powerful bloodline. Even the most talented holy maiden of the Phoenix people probably wouldn't dare to challenge an expert like MDA at the Lord of Mystery realm. Yes, however, I have a condition. MDA must suppress his cultivation level to that of the Lord of Mystery realm and then fight me. If he wins, I won't pursue his previous apology and promise. Zhuan's expression was calm, but he sighed inwardly. On the human side, he was just a wandering cultivator with no background. Although he had reached an agreement with Shao Jin, their relationship was very fragile, and Shao Jin wasn't likely to take such a big risk to go against a terrifying expert like the second elder of the Phoenix people for him. If it were him, he wouldn't do that either, unless there was something wrong with Shao Jin's brain. Zhuan knew that his foundation on the human side was shallow, so he didn't directly question MDA's reneging on his promise. He knew that would only make him look like a clown. It would be better to be more practical and directly challenge MDA and make him swear a heavenly oath. That way, MDA wouldn't dare to break his promise again. Who do you think you? Lord of Creation's trash. You don't even have the right to challenge me. MDA's of the Phoenix People clan Lord of Creation. Was MDA's of the Phoenix People Phoenix Mu's ancestor of creation. The second elder of the Phoenix clan looked on coldly. Although he believed that the human youth was courting death by challenging MDA, he also believed that the human youth was indeed not qualified to challenge MDA. The difference between the two was too great. With MDA's current status and strength, there was no benefit in accepting this kid's challenge, regardless of whether he won or lost. Zhuan didn't mind and calmly said, "Since you think I'm trash and you don't even dare to accept my challenge, then aren't you worse than trash?" MDA's face was gloomy. He coldly looked at Zhuan, his eyes containing fury. "Human, you're really courting death. Since you recklessly want to challenge me, I'll fulfill your wish." MDA slowly walked in front of Zhuan and looked down at Zhuan from above. MDA was a merman. He was more than 3 meters tall, much taller than Zhuan. "Sect Masterin, is this kid really from your Yin and Yang Divine sect? Why is he so brainless? He actually dares to challenge an expert like MDA." Senki Yin slightly frowned and said to Shao Jin beside him with some displeasure. And Shao Jin's face reddened, and he said in a deep voice, "I don't know this kid very well. I only know that his name is Long One. Speaking of which, I just met him. We're only in a cooperative relationship. Oh, just met him? This guy is a loose cultivator? Senki-in asked curiously. Yes, although this kid's cultivation is very low, his physical strength is very powerful. He should have specially cultivated his physical body. Our Yin and Yang divine sect disciple Chao Kangsheng was easily defeated by him, and Xiaojin said, "Oh, Chao Kangsheng was easily defeated by him? I remember that this Chao Kangsheng is a genius second only to Yi Hanfei in your Yin and Yang divine sect. His cultivation is already at the early stage of the Lord of Creation, right?" Xiang Puyu interrupted in astonishment. Yes, this kid is very powerful. So I reach an agreement with him to let this kid represent our Yin and Yang divine sect to enter the door of darkness. And Xiaoji nodded. He didn't mention that Zhuowen had promised to bring back a bottle of ancestral shaman blood. This was because he thought that Zhuowen was bragging. He didn't believe it himself. He had only agreed to cooperate with Zhuowen and give him a spot to enter the door of darkness because of Zhuowen's strength. I see. Since this kid was able to defeat Chao Kangsheng, his battle strength is indeed heaven-defying. However, MDA isn't Chao Kangsheng. This is a Lord of Creation level alien. His battle strength is much stronger than an ordinary early-stage Lord of Creation level human cultivator. Even if this MDA suppresses his cultivation to Lord of Mysteries level, he's still much stronger than Chao Kangsheng. Just the innate bloodline and physical body of the merfolk isn't something the human cultivators can deal with. Senki-in shook his head, not optimistic about Zhuowen's chances. In his opinion, Zhuowen was simply courting death in this battle. It wasn't just Senki-Yin's group. All the cultivators in the human camp felt that this was strange. Their thoughts were the same as Senki-Yin's group. They felt that Zhuowen was courting death. Then swear a heavenly Tao oath first. If you lose, then you have to abide by the promise you made to me just now. If I win, I won't pursue the matter of you breaking the agreement, Zhuowen said. MDA sneered. He cut open his thumb and dripped a drop of essence blood before swearing to the heavenly Tao. After swearing the heavenly Tao oath, MDA said, "This is a challenge you issued to me, so I accidentally killed you. I think this should be a normal thing. You want to kill me?" Zhuowen asked coldly. Haha, it's just killing an ant. I usually attack normally. If I attack too heavily, the ant won't be able to withstand it and dies. Isn't that normal? MDA sneered. Sometimes many ants can bite an elephant to death. Zhuowen said indifferently. MDA's gaze turned cold. Perhaps many ants can bite an elephant to death, but in front of me, no matter how many ants there are, they're still ants. They won't be able to make much of a splash. All right, since the two of you have decided to fight, let's make some space for them, the second elder of the Phoenix people said. Chapter 29:54. Phoenix People's Holy Maiden MDA sneered. Don't worry. Even if my cultivation is suppressed to Lord Profound Theories level, killing you will still be a piece of cake. The Phoenix People's second elder nodded and Xiaojin. He had originally planned to let MDA suppress his own cultivation, but since Zhuowen had made the request, he didn't mind. And Xiaojin walked up to MDA and formed a seal with both hands. He tapped several of MDA's major acupoints, forcefully suppressing his cultivation to Lord Profound Theories level. After doing all that, and Xiaojin looked deeply at Zhuowen. When he walked to Zhuowen's side, he paused and patted Zhuowen's shoulder. MDA isn't simple. Be careful. If you really aren't a match for him, admit defeat early. That way, you won't lose your life. Sect Master, and don't worry. The one who will lose my life won't be me, but MDA, Zhuowen said calmly. And Xiaojin couldn't help but shake his head. Even now, Zhuowen was still bragging. There was no saving him. Thinking of this, and Xiaojin didn't say anything else. He brushed past Zhuowen. In his opinion, Zhuowen was dead for sure in this battle. There was no point in him saying anything more. After Xiaojin left, the human and foreign races consciously left a large empty space. Zhuowen and MDA's battlefield happened to be separated by the door of darkness from the middle, like a dividing line. Zhuowen and MDA faced each other from a distance. Zhuowen's gaze was calm, while MDA's face was full of disdain and contempt. Suddenly, there was a commotion on the outsider's side, attracting the attention of many people. Even Zhuowen and MDA were attracted by the commotion. A beautiful figure slowly walked out from the group of outsiders. Wherever this figure passed, the foreign beings would consciously open up a path for him, and their gazes toward this figure were filled with reverence and admiration. It's the Saintess. I didn't expect the Saintess of the Phoenix people to come out. It seems like even the Saintess is interested in this battle. Ever since the Saintess followed the Phoenix people to the door of darkness, she rarely appears. It's really rare for her to appear today. Could it be because of the merfolk's MDA? That should be the case. I heard that the merfolk race and the Phoenix people have started working closely together. Now, that MDA is fighting someone, the Saintess should come out and give him some face. Discussions broke out among the outsiders. In the end, the Holy Maiden walked to the front of the group of outsiders and came to the side of the second elder of the Phoenix people. Zhuowen's eyes fell on the Saintess, and his heart thumped wildly. The Saintess was wearing a fiery red dress and a phoenix crown on her head. She was surrounded by the shadow of a phoenix, giving her a graceful and luxurious temperament. Her arms were exposed, and they were as white as snow. The only flaw was that she was wearing a veil on her face, so her true appearance could not be seen clearly. This veil was not ordinary. It could actually block a cultivator's divine sense. The moment the Saintess appeared, the cultivators present used their divine sense to check the Saintess' true appearance. But in the end, they all found that it was a waste of effort. However, the moment Zhuowen's gaze fell on the Saintess' beautiful eyes, his expression suddenly froze. His face turned pale, and there was doubt and confusion in his eyes. This was because he found that those eyes were filled with an eternal coldness. There was no warmth in them. Moreover, Zhuowen was sure that those eyes definitely did not belong to Mu Qinxue. He had been with Mu Qinxue for many years. He knew Mu Qinxue's eyes, every movement and every expression clearly. However, the eyes of the Phoenix people's Saintess in front of him did not give him a familiar feeling. Rather, it gave him a completely unfamiliar feeling. Whether it was her eyes, her exposed pure white forehead, or her white jade-like hands, they didn't give Zhuowen the same sense of familiarity as he had in the past. This was a completely unfamiliar woman. This was Zhuowen's first impression of the Saintess. She's not Qinxue. Zhuowen's pupil shrank, feeling that this was unbelievable. When Kong Shi and the three elders of the Phoenix people came to take away Mu Qinxue, they had clearly said that Mu Qinxue had the 99 Phoenix body, so her physique and bloodline were very special. They had also promised that with this physique, Mu Qinxue would definitely become the Phoenix people's Saintess in the future. Before Zhuowen came to the door of darkness, he had heard that the Phoenix people's Saintess had come, so he thought that Mu Qinxue had come. Looking at it now, his expectations had completely disappeared. This was because the Saintess in front of him was not Mu Qinxue, but rather a girl he did not recognize. Perhaps Qinxue's cultivation is too low and hasn't reached the Saintess requirements. This should be the previous Saintess. Zhuowen secretly gave this explanation in his heart. Mu Qinxue had left the 8 heavens domains for the Phoenix people in the Great Desolate Realm. It had not been that long, so it was impossible for her cultivation to increase that quickly. Naturally, it was impossible for her to become the new Saintess this quickly. Thinking that the Phoenix people's Saintess was not Mu Qinxue, Zhuowen instantly lost all interest. It seems like I should go to the Great Desolate Realm when I have time. I wonder how Qinxue is doing in the Phoenix people. Zhuowen thought to himself. Normally, when a human entered the Great Desolate Realm, they would immediately be besieged by the pagans. After all, the aura of a human was too different for the pagans. No matter how powerful the concealment technique was, the non-human kind will be able to identify the aura of a human being. Therefore, even Sun Qin and the others, who were at the early stage of the sky-reaching realm, didn't dare to enter the untainted heaven realm alone. However, Zhuowen was different. His clone's original body was the king of the devouring clan. Although he had cultivated the Pangu's sacred body, and his body had already surpassed the devouring clans, his original body was still a member of the devouring clan. It was much easier for him to enter the great desolate realm compared to other human beings. As long as he put his original body into the great world and hid the great world in the deepest part of his clone's body, it would become the devouring clan's inner world. Then, his clone would be a real member of the devouring clan. Basically, no pagans would suspect his identity when he entered the great desolate realm. The saintess walked to the side of the two elders. Her beautiful eyes looked at Zhuowen and MDA, who were facing each other in the open space. Clearly, the saintess did not know what was going on with the two people facing each other in the open space. However, the two elders said something to the saintess in a low voice. Her beautiful eyes flashed with understanding. Clearly, the two elders were explaining the duel between Zhuowen and MDA to her. In particular, the holy maiden looked at Zhuowen with a look of interest. She was very curious. This human cultivator was merely the lord of profound secrets. How could he have the courage to challenge an early creator lord like MDA? The difference between the two was not small. MDA, who was standing in front of Zhuowen, bowed respectfully when he saw the saintess appear. This was the saintess of the Phoenix people. Her status was one of the highest among the Phoenix people. In the future, she would be a peerless figure who would control the entire Phoenix people. Her potential was limitless. Chapter 29:55. Give you a 5-move handicap after bowing. MDA turned around and looked down at Zhuowen, his eyes full of arrogance. Since the Holy Maiden has personally come to watch the battle, I'll give you a chance to attack. I'll stand here and give you a 3-move handicap. I'll only defend and not attack. After 3 moves, I'll take the initiative to attack. At that time, you'd better behave yourself. MDA stood proudly. He planned to perform well in front of the Holy Maiden. If he could gain her appreciation, it would be of great benefit to his future development in a merfolk race. Your cultivation has been suppressed to the same level as me, the Lord of Profound Secrets, and you still plan to give me a 3-move handicap. Zhuowen had a strange look in his eyes. This MDA really didn't take him seriously and actually planned to give him a 3-move handicap. With Zhuowen's current strength, even if MDA's cultivation hadn't been suppressed to the Lord of Profound Secrets level, MDA giving him a 3-move handicap was just courting death. What? 3 moves aren't enough? If that's not enough, I can give you a 5-move handicap. I don't mind letting you live for 5 more moves. You'll be a dead man soon anyway. MDA put his hands behind his back and raised his chin slightly. His gaze was deep as he spoke in a very pretentious manner. Zhuowen chuckled and didn't say much. Instead, he took a step forward and rushed towards MDA. Since this MDA didn't know what was good for him, he wouldn't be polite. With MDA's cultivation being suppressed, he was just trash in front of Zhuowen. MDA silently looked at Zhuowen, especially when the aura that erupted from Zhuowen was only the Lord of Profound Secrets. His gaze was full of contempt. With such a trashy cultivation, even if he suppressed it, he could still destroy it with a single move. This MDA is really too much. He's fighting Long One as a creation lord. Even if he's suppressing his cultivation, he's already grasped a higher level of heavenly Tao energy and techniques. Long One is already at a disadvantage. Now, this guy is even using such a method to humiliate Long One. This is indirectly humiliating us human cultivators. The human race cultivators were all filled with righteous indignation. During the discussion just now, they already knew Zhuowen's alias. They all knew that this arrogant young man was called Long One. Although they thought that this young man was foolish and had a death wish, he was still a human cultivator. Now, he was going to be beaten to death in front of everyone. Moreover, he was beaten to death in a way that allowed him to make a move. They couldn't help but feel a little sad for him. As expected, he's just the Lord of Profound Secrets. And here I was wondering how powerful he would be. The second elder shook his head and muttered to himself, somewhat speechless. As soon as Zhuan made his move, he only used the power of his main body. Although this kind of power was indeed stronger than ordinary Lord Xuanji's, compared to MDA's, the gap was a little too big. The crowd didn't need to continue watching to guess that Zhuan's fate would be very miserable. MDA laughed maniacally, thinking that this fellow was indeed a trash. Zhuan's movements were basically seen through by him. In his eyes, this was simply moving in slow motion. Boom! Zhuan already swept in front of MDA, the 5 fingers of his right hand forming a fist, whistling toward his face. I said you're trash. You're indeed trash. This move was completely seen through by me. What are you still fighting with me for? MDA shook his head and sneered. His right hand formed a palm and casually extended, welcoming Zhuan's right fist that rumbled over. Bang! Zhuan's right fist was very easily grasped by MDA's palm. When the surrounding people saw this scene, they could not help shaking their heads. MDA's realm was much higher than Zhuan's. Even if his cultivation was suppressed to the same level as Zhuan, the latter was also completely unable to be MDA's match. I thought that this boy wouldn't be simple. Didn't expect that he's just at this level. After 5 moves, MDA can finish this boy off in 1 move. The second elder shook his head and said with a cold smile. Although the holy maiden standing beside the second elder did not speak, it could be seen from her expression that she lacked interest in this battle. After all, the disparity between the two was too great. Gotcha! Just when everyone thought that after grasping Zhuan's fist, MDA would directly tear off Zhuan's right hand in a spurt of energy, the following scene left everyone dumbstruck. They saw a sparkling radiance suddenly erupt from Zhuan's fist, and a terrifying aura that could devour heaven and earth suddenly erupted. MDA, who originally did not care, suddenly narrowed his eyes as he felt an unprecedented sense of crisis. Soon after, he felt that the strength of the fist that he had clenched had undergone a qualitative change. It was as if an unreachable mountain had landed on his right hand. Gotcha! The crisp sound of bones breaking resounded as MDA's right arm was directly twisted in half by this punch. The forearm bone pierced through his elbow, while the backbone pierced through his shoulder. Bloody mist burst out from MDA's right arm, looking very terrifying. MDA let out a blood-curdling scream and immediately held his crippled right arm. Just as he was about to retreat, a palm instantly appeared on his cheek and fiercely slapped him. With a slap, MDA was directly slapped to the ground, his head fiercely colliding with the ground, causing the earth to violently tremble. A large crater was directly smashed into MDA's head, while the right side of MDA's face swelled up, a tragic sight to behold. This scene happened too quickly, and before anyone could react, MDA's right hand was crippled, and his face was fiercely slapped. Just what kind of situation was this? Although MDA said that he would let Su Chun have 5 moves, this was a bit too much. Zhuan slapped MDA to the ground, but did not continue to attack. Instead, he faintly smiled and said, "Elder MDA is really courteous. You said you would let me have 1 move, and you really did. Moreover, you even took the initiative to let me slap your face. I'm really overwhelmed by your favor." Zhuan's voice caused all the stunned cultivators to return to their senses. They all looked at Zhuan strangely. Although this kid gave a reasonable explanation for the face slapping just now, they would not be so foolish as to actually believe his words. Although MDA said that he would let Su Chun have 1 move, it was not to the extent of letting him stretch his face out to be slapped. If MDA really did let Su Chun have 1 move willingly, then this MDA was definitely a retard. Elder MDA, still not getting up? Didn't you say that you would let me have 5 moves? You already let me have 1 move. There's still 4 left. Zhuan said indifferently. MDA stood up, his gaze gloomy as he looked at Zhuan, his heart alarmed. Just now, that burst of power that Zhuan suddenly erupted with was absolutely not something that the Lord of Profound Secrets could possess. Moreover, he discovered that it seemed to be this kid's physical strength. Thinking of this possibility, he felt incredulous. Although the human race also had body refinement cultivators, due to their congenital defects, there were no formidable powerhouses in the area of body refinement at all. Furthermore, their foreign race had an innate advantage. Even if they did not specialize in body refinement, their physical strength was still much stronger than human cultivators. However, this human in front of him was actually able to erupt with such terrifying physical strength just now. He even began to wonder if this guy was really human. Elder MDA, it's time for the second move. Stand where you are and don't move. I'm going to attack. While MDA was still in a daze, Zhuan's voice rang out again. Then, a terrifying gust of wind attacked again. The air exploded, as if the entire space was being torn apart. Chapter 29:56. Defeat. Kacha. MDA's undamaged left hand abruptly formed a seal, before suddenly blasting it out. Instantly, a boundless ocean condensed around him. Wave after wave surged up, each wave higher than the previous one. It was a terrifying sight. Wave folding divine fist. MDA growled and punched out. The fist energy formed a terrifying wave that was higher than the previous one. At this moment, Zhuan's figure had already appeared in front of MDA. In front of the endless waves, Zhuan's figure was so small and humble, as if he would be swept away by the huge waves at any time and turned to ashes. However, Zhuan's expression was as calm as water. In the face of such a terrifying wave, he only punched out. If MDA's cultivation was still at the early stage of the Lord of Creation, the power of this move would be very terrifying. With Zhuan's current strength, he would probably have to pay a heavy price if he wanted to take it head-on. Unfortunately, MDA's cultivation had now been forcibly suppressed to the level of the Lord of Mystery by Xiaojin. Even if MDA could skillfully use the power of the heavenly Tao and could easily deal with the ordinary Lord of Mystery, Zhuan couldn't. On the contrary, MDA's battle with Zhuan was simply asking for trouble. After all, the Pangu's sacred body was so terrifying that it was basically invincible within the same realm. As long as MDA suppressed his realm to the same level as Zhuan, he would be looking for a beating. Bang! 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 Zhuan punched out again and again. Every punch contained extremely terrifying heavenly Tao energy, breaking through the surging waves one after another. Rip! The sound of cloth tearing resounded. Soon after, Zhuan broke through the last wave. Like a god descending to the mortal world, he descended in front of MDA. His right fist blasted out like lightning, smashing directly into MDA's left arm. Kacha! MDA's left arm was directly blasted into a bloody mist. MDA screamed and fell heavily to the ground. His face was ferocious and pale, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. The second move. There are still 3 moves left. Before MDA could struggle to get up, he heard Zhuan's cold voice again. Then, a gust of wind swept over, causing MDA's expression to change greatly. Slap! As soon as he raised his head, he saw a palm suddenly whistling towards his face. With a slap, MDA's head was slapped into the ground. The fourth move. Zhuan didn't give MDA any time to catch his breath. Zhuan MDA's right kick. MDA was Zhuan's MDA's? He MDA's in the air. Zhuan's his right hand. Zhuan's right. This slap was too loud, like a thunderclap. MDA's right cheek was slapped open, and he spat out broken teeth mixed with blood. He looked very miserable. MDA, that's enough. Is God, is did-a-diddy and did-a-did-if was. What kind of freak is this? He's clearly just the Lord of profound secrets. Why does he have such terrifying battle strength? Especially the terrifying physical strength displayed by this person. He's much stronger than me. Is he a foreign race? Or am I a foreign race? Thinking of this, MDA felt as if thousands of mud horses were galloping over his head. He began to suspect whether he was a foreign race or the human cultivator in front of him was. Everyone at the scene was stunned. What the F***CK was going on? Didn't MDA say that long one was trash? Didn't they agree to let him have 5 moves and then eliminate him in 1 move? Now he was beaten like a dog. Is this the so-called trash MDA was talking about? Elder MDA's meaning is that you admit defeat. Zhuan slowly walked up to MDA and looked down at MDA, who was lying limp on the ground and twitching all over. MDA's eyes flickered. Finally, he nodded. I admit defeat. Since you admit defeat, then keep your promise. Hand over the spirit ring in your hand. Zhuan spread out his right hand and looked coldly at MDA. Humiliation flashed in MDA's eyes, but he was helpless. His cultivation was suppressed by Xiaojin's power, and he could only display the Lord of Profound Secrets' power. In his current state, he was no match for Zhuan at all unless he could break through Xiaojin's power. But he knew that was impossible, and Xiaojin was an early-stage Lord of Profound Secrets. He was much stronger than him. If he wanted to break through Xiaojin's power, wouldn't that be courting death? Sighing, MDA could only take off the spirit ring in his hand and throw it to Zhuan. His heart was filled with pain. There were many good things in his spirit ring, including his many years of savings. How could he not feel pain when he gave it to Zhuan just like that? Putting away MDA's spirit ring, Zhuan nodded in satisfaction. Shortly after, he continued, in addition, you need to kneel in front of me, kowtow 3 times and 9 times, call me grandfather, and apologize to me. Hearing that, MDA's face turned ashen. If he really did as Zhuan said, it would be too humiliating. Once he did that, he would lose all his face. Moreover, he could imagine that he would become the laughingstock of the merfolk and foreign races in the future. What? Elder MDA is unwilling? I won't force you if you're unwilling. But I remember you swore to the heavenly Tao, right? If you don't abide by it, I'm afraid you know what punishment will follow without me saying, Zhuan said with a faint smile. MDA's face was gloomy. What Zhuan said was right. Because he didn't care about this kid, he easily swore to the heavenly Tao. Even if this kid didn't pursue the matter, the heavenly Tao wouldn't ignore it. Once he violated the heavenly Tao's oath, the heavenly Tao would send down punishment, and his life would be in danger. Thinking up to there, MDA took a deep breath and very straightforwardly knelt in front of Zhuan. Shortly after, he kowtowed 3 times and kowtowed 9 times, solemnly apologizing to Zhuan. After doing all that, MDA quickly left the human camp. He really didn't have the face to stay here. After MDA left, the human camp was quiet for a moment before a tsunami of cheers rang out. Everyone looked at Zhuan's figure with fervent gazes. They never thought that this battle with such a huge disparity in strength would end in such an unexpected result. In the beginning, who would have thought that a mere human cultivator like the Lord of Profundity would be able to defeat a foreign race cultivator like the Lord of Creation? Although this was also because MDA's cultivation had been forcefully suppressed, even so, MDA's strength still wouldn't be much weaker. He was probably comparable to an ordinary Lord of Creation. But even so, MDA was still defeated by this kid. It was clear just how terrifying this kid's strength was. Chapter 29:57. Ihan Fei, the second elder of the Phoenix people, frowned slightly before shaking his head. I'm not sure about this person either. I don't think there's someone like him among the younger generation of the Tao Palace-level organizations in the Xianmi Heavenly region. He seems to have appeared out of nowhere. Looks like he's an independent cultivator. He's quite powerful. If I'm not wrong, he did not use his full strength in his battle with Elder MDA. He's most likely the one who killed Sauron. The Saintess said nonchalantly. Saintess, you think Sauron was really killed by him? The second elder asked in surprise. The Saintess nodded. MDA's senses towards the mermaid seal are usually correct. Since he sensed the presence of the mermaid seal from this person, it means that the mermaid seal definitely exists on this person. However, why was the mermaid seal not verified in the end? He must have used some special method to temporarily conceal the presence of the mermaid seal. During the verification process, the mermaid seal did not appear. The second elder narrowed his eyes and said softly, "Saintess, if Sauron really was killed by this person, we shouldn't let him go. Right now, the Merfolk clan has close ties with us Phoenix people. We can't just ignore Sauron's death." However, the Saintess shook her head. "There's no need for us to concern ourselves with this matter. Even MDA was unable to verify the presence of the mermaid seal on this person, so it's even more impossible for us to do so. Are we supposed to confirm that this person is the murderer without any evidence? That's clearly unrealistic. Furthermore, it'll only incur the disgust of human cultivators. At that time, it'll even lead to a war between humans and foreign races. It's very unwise for both sides to stand up before entering the door of darkness." The second elder nodded along with the Saintess analysis. He believed that the Saintess analysis was on point. "I think this person will be entering the door of darkness this time as well. If I encounter this person in the door of darkness, I'll kill him. It'll be an explanation to MDA and the Merfolk clan," continued the Saintess. At this moment, Zhuan had completely become the focus of everyone's attention in the human camp. Everyone stared at Zhuan passionately. Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and Shaojin personally came before Zhuan. Their eyes were filled with amazement. They didn't expect the final battle to be reversed like this. This was too inconceivable, and Shaojin, in particular, was filled with excitement. The strength Zhuan had just displayed was even more powerful and terrifying than when he had taught Xiao Kangsheng a lesson. He was probably comparable to the most powerful person in the Yin and Yang divine sect, Yi Hanfei. Since such a genius had entered the Dark Door on behalf of the Yin and Yang divine sect, he must have gained a lot. He was full of expectations for Zhuan's promise that he would bring out a bottle of ancestral witch blood. This was because he vaguely felt that Zhuan was not lying. It was very likely that this person really had the ability to do so. After Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu praised Zhuan, they returned to their respective teams. The members of the Yin and Yang divine sect surrounded Zhuan one after another. They were as excited as sparrows, asking Zhuan all kinds of questions, as if Zhuan was some celebrity idol. Zhuan was a little speechless at everyone's enthusiasm. He could only laugh dryly and casually answer the questions raised by everyone. Xiao Kangsheng looked at Zhuan, who was surrounded by people, and his gaze became even gloomier. The flames of jealousy in his heart burned fiercely. Xing Xinglan's expression was also not very good. Just now, he was hoping that Zhuan would be beaten to death by MDA. Now, it seemed that this was completely wishful thinking. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as everyone's eyes were focused on Zhuan, several streams of light suddenly swept over from outside the dark door. Powerful auras were like black clouds pressing down on a mountain, enveloping and crushing down. The streams of light converged, revealing 5 figures. These 5 figures were 4 men and 1 woman. Among the 5 figures, the most eye-catching one was the only woman. This woman looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. She had a well-proportioned figure, especially a pair of slender jade legs, which were very eye-catching. Behind this woman, there was an old man who had hidden his strength. The combination of these 2 people happened to be Zhongli Haoyin and Elder Zhong, who had just appeared in the Starry Sky Plaza. In addition to these 2 people, Zhuan knew 2 of the 3 people. One of them was a young man with a cool expression, Yi Qidong, a genius of the Eastern Dao region's Dao Palace-level force, Scarlet Mountain Villa. He was also the leader of the 5 great monsters of the host region and ranked 2nd on the Starry Sky contribution list. The other person was also one of the 5 great monsters of the host region, Jiang Qixing. He was the number 1 genius of the Dao Palace-level force chasing Sun Temple. However, compared to a monster like Yi Qidong, he was still lacking by quite a bit. The last man looked very young. He was a typical pretty boy, dressed in white, and was very pretentious. However, most of this white-robed man's attention was placed on Zhongli Haoyin. His eyes did not conceal his admiration for Zhongli Haoyin. Zhongli Haoyin also noticed the admiration in the white-robed man's eyes. Her beautiful eyes were filled with indifference, and she ignored the white-robed man. Look, Zhongli Hao Yin is also here. Yi Qidong and Yi Hanfei are also here. I didn't expect the top 3 geniuses of the Starry Sky contribution list to come to the Door of Darkness at the same time. The people in the human race camp were in an uproar after discovering the true identity of these 5 streams of light. Zhuowen also finally found out the identity of the pretentious white-robed man from the crowd's discussion. He was actually the #1 genius of the Yin and Yang divine sect, Yi Hanfei, who was also ranked 3rd on the Starry Sky contribution list. After Zhongli Hao Yin arrived at the Door of Darkness, she did not even greet them before landing in the team representing Heavenly Temple. The Temple Master of Heavenly Temple did not come this time. The strongest person should be the old man behind Zhongli Hao Yin. Although this old man's aura was completely concealed and Zhuowen couldn't see his true cultivation level, Zhuowen could faintly guess that this old man was at least a half-step Heaven Conduit Lord, perhaps even an early Heaven Conduit Lord. Heavenly Temple was the strongest Dao Palace faction in the North Dao region. It was said that there was more than one Skyrim Master in it. It was a very mysterious and powerful faction, and it was faintly showing signs of becoming the strongest Dao Palace faction in the entire Xianmi Sky region. After Zhongli Hao Yin returned to the team, Yi Qidong and Jiang Qixing also returned to their respective teams. However, Yi Hanfei looked at Zhongli Hao Yin's back with some reluctance before returning to the team representing the Yin and Yang divine sect. Hanfei greets the sect master. Yi Hanfei bowed respectfully to Xiaojin as soon as he landed, and Xiaojin nodded and looked Yi Hanfei up and down. Your cultivation has improved again. It seems that you have exchanged all the points in the Starry Sky token for cultivation, right? Yi Hanfei cupped his hands and said, Yes, the Door of Darkness is full of danger this time. Only with greater strength will we have greater competitiveness. Hanfei believes that exchanging points for cultivation is much more practical than exchanging for other things. It's good that you have such a way of thinking. If I'm not wrong, your cultivation should have already reached the late-stage Genesis stage. Not bad, not bad. And Xiaojin could not help but nod, his eyes full of praise. Chapter 2958. Shocked, by the way, Sect Master. This time I came from the Starry Sky Tower with Hao Yin and the others. When we were about to enter the Door of Darkness, we found traces of a terrible fight near the Door of Darkness. Yi Hanfei suddenly said. Traces of a fight? Now is a critical time. Why would someone dare to risk universal condemnation and fight near the Door of Darkness? Do they not want to enter the Door of Darkness? And Xiaojin asked with a gloomy face. They're not people from our temporary alliance, but Blood Prison assassins. And this time, Blood Prison sent 108 elite assassins and arranged a blood-splashing limitless array in the Void Dimension near the Door of Darkness. Yi Hanfei continued, blood-splashing limitless array, and Xiaojin's face changed slightly. The blood-splashing limitless array was a taboo technique of Blood Prison. It was impossible for him not to have heard of it. When Yi Hanfei mentioned the Blood Prison assassins in the Void Dimension, Xing Xinglan and Yao Xiangjuan's faces changed, and they looked at Zhuowen not far away. They knew very well that the purpose of the group of Blood Prison assassins was to kill Zhuowen, and they did not hesitate to use the blood-splashing limitless array. However, Zhuowen was lucky enough to escape in the end. They had to admit that Zhuowen was indeed a monster. However, the two of them were also worried that Zhuowen's presence in the Yin and Yang divine sect would attract the attention of the Blood Prison assassin hidden in the Void Dimension and affect them. They were placed in the outside world by Zhuowen, and their divine senses were shielded, so they did not know that all the Blood Prison assassins, including the 3 kills, had been killed by Zhuowen. They thought that Zhuowen had escaped by luck. Blood Prison is really generous. They even arranged a blood-splashing limitless array. It seems that the target this time is not simple. I wonder who the Blood Prison is targeting. By the way, Hanfei, did you see who the Blood Prison killed? And Xiaojin looked at Yi Hanfei and asked. Yi Hanfei shook his head and said with a strange look in his eyes, "I don't know who the blood prison's target is. However, by the time I arrived at the void dimension, all 108 blood prison assassins had fallen." What? The 108 blood prison killers who arranged the blood-splattering limitless array were all dead? This, and Xiao Jin was shocked. Not only that, but even the blood prison's third killer is dead. I personally found his corpse in the void dimension. At this point, Yihanfei's eyes were filled with admiration as he continued. Even under the pincer attack of the sanguine limitless formation and the triple kill formation, he was still able to come out unscathed. Moreover, he was able to turn the tables and kill them all. This person is definitely a true powerhouse and a role model for our generation. And Xiao Jin also nodded in agreement. The blood-splattering limitless array was too famous. Back then, the blood prison had relied on this array formation to kill an early-stage heaven-reaching master powerhouse, shocking the entire Xian Mi heavenly domain. Although the blood prison had declined and couldn't afford to use the 108 creature-level assassins of the past to set up a formation, an eternal overlord assassin was still enough to kill a creature-level powerhouse. And the cultivator who broke this blood-splattering limitless formation must have a cultivation base that reached the heavens and had terrifying strength. He was also quite curious about this kind of expert. In the team, Xing Xinglan and Yao Xiangjuan's gazes became extremely strange, and they couldn't help but look at Zhuowen not far away. Both of them knew that the purpose of the Blood Prison's assassins setting up the blood-splattering limitless formation was to kill this person. Now that they learned that the Blood Prison's assassins had been completely wiped out, and even the triple kill had fallen, they couldn't help but wonder if the person who broke the blood-splattering limitless formation and killed the triple kill was Zhuowen. This was truly inconceivable. How could Zhuowen's strength be so formidable? Damn, fortunately, I didn't provoke this fiend after I came back. If this guy really had the strength to destroy the blood-splattering limitless formation and the triple kill, I would have just brought about my own destruction by provoking him. Xing Xinglan muttered in his heart, hoping for a fluke. On the other hand, Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were full of complex emotions. She also didn't expect this person's strength to be so terrifying. And for some reason, every time she looked at this dragon character, she always felt a sense of familiarity from it. This sense of familiarity was inexplicable. Huh, who is this person? Only then did Yihanfei notice that there was a stranger in the group, Zhuowen. He glanced at Zhuowen, his eyes full of doubt. Hanfei, this person is Long One. He's working with our Yin and Yang divine sect. And Xiao Jin calmly introduced Zhuowen to Yihanfei, including the matter of Zhuowen teaching Chao Kongqing a lesson, as well as the tyrannical mermaid MDA. Oh, but the Lord of Profound Secrets is actually so powerful. Yihanfei looked up and down at Zhuowen, his eyes revealing a look of surprise. He didn't expect the Lord of Profound Secrets to have such terrifying strength. This simply defied common sense. However, he didn't doubt Xiao Jin's words. After all, Xiao Jin was the sect master of the Yin and Yang divine sect. Every word he said was worth 1,000 gold. He wouldn't speak carelessly. Your strength is not bad. After the door of darkness opens, just follow me. Everything must be under my command, understand? Yihanfei arrived in front of Zhuowen, his gaze arrogant as he said indifferently. Although Xiao Jin emphasized that Zhuowen's strength was very powerful when introducing him, Yihanfei didn't care too much. Although Chao Kongqing was the number 2 genius of the Yin and Yang divine sect, the gap between them was seriously too great. He didn't take it to heart. Meanwhile, although MDA was stronger than him, if he similarly suppressed his cultivation to the Lord of Profound Secrets, he could similarly defeat him easily. Therefore, although Zhuowen's 2 battles were not bad in his view, it wasn't enough to make him pay special attention. Perhaps you don't understand. I'm only working with your sect master, not you. Letting you command me, thinking too much. Zhuowen said with a cold smile. Yihanfei's eyes narrowed, his voice becoming very cold as he said, "You dare to disobey me?" "Disobey you? Do you have the qualifications to make me disobey? Zhuowen retorted sarcastically. Then he looked at Xiao Jin and said, Sect Masterin, I'll be separated from your group as soon as I enter the door of darkness. I don't plan to follow your group. But don't worry, I've always remembered the promise I made to you. I'll definitely help you complete it. With that, Zhuowen sat down cross-legged on the cushion at the side and didn't say anything else. Yihanfei's face was gloomy, but he didn't act out in the end. However, his gaze toward Zhuowen was very unfriendly. Not long after Zhuowen sat down, he smelled a fragrance. Then he opened his eyes and discovered that Yao Xiangjuan had appeared before him at some point. Miss Yao, is there something you need? Zhuowen said with a smile. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes flickered. She suddenly said, Long One, actually, your name is very similar to the name of an old friend of mine. However, your auras and appearances are completely different. Chapter 2959. Moses Yao Xiangjuan couldn't help but feel a little disappointed when she saw Zhuowen deny it. She had actually thought of Zhuowen. She remembered that Zhuowen had also used the alias Long One. The more she looked at Long One, the more familiar she found him. She had wanted to ask if this person was also Zhuowen. But now, it seemed that she had been overthinking things. Although she knew that Zhuowen was very talented and had always been ahead of her, she clearly didn't think that Zhuowen's improvement would be so terrifying that he could reach Long Wen's heaven-defying level. Since she had already confirmed that the youth before her wasn't Zhuowen, Yao Xiangjuan didn't have too much hope for him. Yao Xiangjuan's gaze was solemn as she said to Zhuowen in a deep voice, Long One, you have to be careful of Yihanfei. Don't be fooled by his refined appearance. He's extremely petty and will seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Moreover, he hates people who go against him the most. You contradicted him just now, so he probably has his eyes on you. When we enter the door of darkness, he will probably harm you. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, If he really wants to deal with me, then he can bring it on. I really won't be afraid. In truth, Zhuowen really didn't think much of Yihanfei. Perhaps Yihanfei's battle prowess was very terrifying, but in his opinion, Yihanfei's battle prowess was at most equivalent to the early-stage Lord of Creation's battle prowess. Zhuowen had even killed an early-stage Lord of Creation before. Would he be afraid of Yihanfei? Yao Xiangjuan shook her head inwardly when she saw how conceited Zhuowen was, but she didn't try to persuade him. She knew that with Long Wen's strength, he was definitely an extremely arrogant person. He had blind confidence in his own strength, so it would be strange if he listened to her advice. Miss Yao, after we enter the door of darkness, if you follow me, I can guarantee that you will quickly break through the shackles of your current cultivation. Moreover, I will bring you many opportunities. Zhuowen suddenly said to Yao Xiangjuan with a grin. Yao Xiangjuan looked at Zhuowen and smiled. She didn't know why. Even though she was clearly rejecting him in her heart, her mouth unexpectedly agreed. Then it settled. Zhuowen smiled and sat cross-legged on the futon with his eyes closed. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were filled with surprise. She took a deep look at Zhuowen, but didn't say anything as she returned to her seat. The interaction between Yao Xiangjuan and Zhuowen was naturally seen by Yihanfei, who was not far away. Yihanfei's expression did not look good. Yao Xiangjuan was the most beautiful female cultivator in the Yin and Yang divine sect. In terms of appearance, even Zhongli Haoyan was slightly inferior. She was a true beauty. Yihanfei had tried to seduce Yao Xiangjuan many times, but Yao Xiangjuan's attitude towards him was always lukewarm. In the end, he left it at that and shifted his target to Zhongli Haoyan. Unfortunately, Zhongli Haoyan did not give him any face either. Now, Yao Xiangjuan, who had rejected him in the past, was actually so close to Long One. Moreover, the two of them seemed to be chatting happily. The two of them seemed to be getting along very well. Yao Xiangjuan had never spoken so much to him before. Thinking of this, Yihanfei was even more displeased with Zhuowen. He wished he could rush up and give this arrogant boy a good beating. Senior brother, this boy is really hateful. Not only did he beat me up as soon as he joined the team, but he also disobeyed your orders. What's more hateful is that he actually seduced Junior's sister Yao. This boy is simply harboring unfathomable motives. You have to be careful. Chao Kangcheng, who was beside Yi Hanfei, said fiercely. Don't mess around in the door of darkness this time. Let's find the corpse of Grand Wizard Gonggong first. As for this boy, it won't be too late to teach him a lesson then. Yi Hanfei scolded in a low voice. Although Yi Hanfei was very displeased with Zhuowen, he knew his limits. The purpose of entering the door of darkness this time was not to cause internal strife, but to try his best to find good things in the door of darkness, especially the corpse of Grand Wizard Gonggong. Chao Kangcheng nodded submissively and did not dare to disobey Yi Hanfei's words. In the following period of time, many figures from both the human clan and the alien clan arrived one after another. Most of them were young genius experts summoned by various forces and races. During this period, Zhuowen kept a low profile. Most of the time, he sat cross-legged in the team of the Yin and Yang divine sect. Of course, Zhuowen was not really cultivating. Instead, he was silently observing the young talents from both the human clan and the alien clan. After some observation, Zhuowen secretly shook his head because he found that the overall strength of the young talent from the alien clan was much stronger than that of the human clan. Moreover, it was not just a little stronger, but much stronger. Most of the young talents from the alien clan who had come this time were from the 10 great races of the primitive heaven realm. 5 of the 10 great races had come this time. Among them were the Phoenix people, the Merman clan, the Spacetime Beast clan, the Black Tiger clan, and the Dragon clan. In addition to these 5 races, there were many other races among the alien clan. However, these races could only be considered above average in the primitive heaven realm. Compared to the 10 great races, they were like heaven and earth. Moreover, Zhuowen discovered that after Sauron of the Merman clan was killed, the Merman clan had sent another young genius from the Merman clan. This genius from the Merman clan was even more famous than Sauron. He was a genius that the Merman clan had truly nurtured. His name was Moses. Moses' cultivation was much stronger than Sauron's. Although he had not broken through to the Lord of Creation, the second major realm of the third step of Tao validation, he was already a half-step Lord of Creation. Moreover, he had a special bloodline that was even more powerful than Sauron's. Sauron's status in the Merman clan was very high, but compared to Moses, he was still lacking. After all, his bloodline and cultivation were inferior. It was natural that his status was lower than Moses. When Moses arrived in front of the door of darkness, he saw MDA, who had been beaten up beyond recognition. He frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "MDA, you sent a message saying that Sauron was killed by someone. And what happened to you? Who beat you up? Lord Moses, you're finally here. Actually, it's like this." MDA scowled miserably and began to describe what had happened to Moses, including how he had been tricked by Long One. "You're right. I indeed sense the aura of the Merman seal curse in the human camp. Your senses should be correct. However, how did that fellow avoid the verification of your essence blood? The Merman seal curse is directly planted in the trajectory of a cultivator's fate, and the trajectory of fate is fixed. It's impossible to arbitrarily change or change it. This child can avoid the verification of your essence blood. Could it be that he can control the trajectory of fate?" Moses' gaze was calm as he began to analyze. However, the more he analyzed, the more puzzled he became. Chapter 2960. Entering the Door of Darkness. Lord Moses, perhaps this child has grasped the secret technique of the trajectory of fate. MDA, he said cautiously. Moses' eyes shone brightly. His gaze swept past the many foreign races and landed on the youth in the Heaven and Earth Divine Sex team. "I'm afraid this child has many secrets. This is really interesting. After entering the door of darkness, I intend to dig out his secrets," Moses said calmly. MDA lowered his head, and a trace of pleasure flashed through his eyes. He knew that Moses was going to make a move. Although he was confident that it wouldn't be difficult for him to deal with Long One at his peak, the foreign races and the human race had already formed an alliance. He would be crazy to make a move now. This could only be done after entering the door of darkness. However, his cultivation level was already at the early stage Lord of Creation Realm. Only cultivators below the Lord of Creation Realm could enter the door of darkness. He didn't have the opportunity to enter, but Moses could. Moses was the most terrifying genius in the history of the Merman race. His bloodline was also the closest to the Merman race's ancestor. His combat strength was unparalleled. In front of Moses, MDA was just a piece of trash. It was because he knew how terrifying Moses was that he was confident that if Moses made a move, Longwen would definitely die. In the Heaven and Earth Divine Sex team, Zhuan also noticed Moses' gaze. His gaze turned grave. Moses gave him a lot of pressure. He could feel that Moses was much stronger than Solon. He was a real enemy. Besides Moses, the Phoenix People's Saintess was also a strong opponent. Zhuan even felt that the Phoenix People's Saintess' combat strength was probably even more terrifying than Moses's. It was just that she hit it more deeply. After entering the door of darkness, Zhuan planned to find an opportunity to find the Phoenix People's Saintess. He wanted to ask her about Mu Qinshue's current situation in the Phoenix People. Of course, besides Moses and the Phoenix People's Saintess, the space-time beast race, the Black Tiger race, and the Dragon race had also sent their outstanding younger generation members. Sha Ru of the space-time beast race, Hu Bin of the Black Tiger race, and Lung Bai of the Dragon race were famous among the younger generation of the Great Desolate Heaven domain. However, Zhuan felt that Sha Ru, Hu Bin, and Lung Bai were inferior to Moses and the Phoenix People's Saintess. This could be seen from their humble attitude towards Moses and the Phoenix People's Saintess. On the side of the human race, there were heavenly temples Zhongli Hao Yin, Scarlet Mountain Manors Yi Qidong, and Yin Yang Divine Sex Yi Hanfei, the top 3 geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution list. And this time, the top 10 on the universal contribution list were basically all here. All of them rubbed their palms together, eager to give a try. Entering the door of darkness this time, there will be a fierce battle. Yao Xiangjuan sat beside Zhuan, her beautiful eyes sizing up the numerous teams around her, revealing a dignified expression. Zhuan nodded, but also had some doubts. He said, "I see that most of the young geniuses of the human race are here. On the other hand, only 5 of the top 10 alien races are here. Don't tell me that the alien races don't care about the ancestral shaman's corpse?" Yao Xiangjuan shook her head and said helplessly, "I'm not sure about this, but this is also beneficial to us. The less powerful the alien races are, the more competitive we will be." Zhuan was puzzled, but he didn't take it to heart. His eyes casually scanned the surroundings. In the past few days, the human race's camp in front of the door of darkness had increased by several times. Most of them were young geniuses from various factions and races. Soon, Zhuan's gaze froze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. This was because he saw a very familiar fat figure. It was a fat man who was bloated like a ball. He was sitting cross-legged in a small team in the northeast corner of the human race's camp. However, this fat man was very dishonest. While sitting, his eyes were rolling around, and no one knew what he was thinking. This damn fat man, after tricking me, he actually came to the door of darkness. Zhuan gritted his teeth and glared at the fat man. Ma Yujia's team was from a Dao Palace faction called the Ultimate Tower. The Ultimate Tower was a Dao Palace faction that was ranked at the bottom of the northern Dao region. They had only been able to come to the door of darkness because of luck. Ma Yujia was only a loose cultivator. After coming to the door of darkness and learning about the rules, he naturally chose to cooperate with a faction like Zhuan. This fat man was much more despicable than Zhuan. He chose the weakest faction and then used his array Dao skills to successfully cooperate with the leader of the Ultimate Towers team. After all, this fat man was very arrogant. In the Ultimate Towers team, he was like a boss. These few days, he had been living a life of luxury. Many of the Ultimate Towers disciples had been unhappy with this fat man for a long time. However, Out of respect for the Ultimate Tower's sect master and the fact that this fat man was truly capable, many of them had secretly swallowed their anger. At this moment, Ma Yujia casually dismissed a disciple from the Ultimate Tower. His eyes darted around as he sized up the surrounding teams. TSK, TSK. The humans are much more attentive than the other races. More than 70% of the Dao Palace factions in the Xian, Mi Heavenly region are here. 5 of the top 10 races of the Eldritch Heavenly region are here. However, none of them are simple people. I have to plan my route to the Door of Darkness. Ma Yujia rubbed his chin with his right hand. Suddenly, he felt a cold gaze on him. Ma Yujia trembled. He turned his head and met the gaze of the owner of the gaze. Then, he quickly turned his face away. Damn, it's Zhuowen. When did this guy come to the Door of Darkness? How'd I not notice him? Ma Yujia muttered to himself. He pretended that he didn't see Zhuowen. This wasn't Ma Yujia's fault. Although the battle between Zhuowen and MDA had been sensational, Ma Yujia hadn't yet arrived at the Door of Darkness. He had been in a treasured land outside the dark ancient city. By the time he arrived at the Door of Darkness, Zhuowen and MDA's battle had already ended. Moreover, Zhuowen had been very low-key during this time. He had been sitting with the Yin-Yang Divine Sex team, resting with his eyes closed. It was normal that Ma Yujia hadn't noticed Zhuowen. Zhuowen didn't stand up to look for Ma Yujia. He knew that even if he did, this fat man would deny it. It would be a waste of effort. Moreover, he was about to enter the Door of Darkness. When the time came, he could settle the score with this fat man. After waiting on the praying mat for a while, the humans, led by Senki Yin and assisted by Xiang Piyu and Xiao Jin, walked out. On the other side, the 2 elders of the Phoenix people walked out. I see that the cultivators from both sides have arrived. There's no need to block the entrance of the Door of Darkness anymore. The 2 elders of the Phoenix people said indifferently. Naturally, from now on, we humans won't block the Door of Darkness. It's up to you outsiders, Senki Yin replied. Chapter 2961. Scarlet Valley. Everyone, you should know that the Door of Darkness has a heaven-span grand formation, right? This formation is too powerful. Even if we join forces with the alien race experts, we can't break it. Senki Yin stood at the front of the human team, floating in the air as he spoke. The 2 elders of the Phoenix clan also floated in front of the alien race team, their words similar to Senki Yin's. However, this formation has a special characteristic, and that is that it absolutely won't react to cultivators below the Master of Creation level. In other words, cultivators above the Master of Creation level will be attacked by the formation upon entering the Door of Darkness, while cultivators below the Master of Creation level will be able to safely pass through. Previously, for the sake of fairness, we were waiting for the genius cultivators of each faction. Now that everyone is here, we won't stop you. All cultivators below the Master of Creation level may enter. As soon as Sun Qin finished speaking, the human race and foreign race camps were in an uproar. Immediately, one figure after another impatiently rushed out and rushed into the Door of Darkness. Junior Sister Yao, the Door of Darkness is full of danger. Follow me in. This way, we can take care of you. Yi Hanfei ordered as he stood up and looked at Yao Xiangjuan, who was sitting beside Zhuowen. Yao Xiangjuan frowned slightly. She didn't like Yi Hanfei's commanding tone, but she didn't contradict him either. After all, Yi Hanfei was the strongest genius of the Yin and Yang divine sect. His status was high, higher than most of the elders in the sect. Seeing Yao Xiangjuan remain silent, Yi Hanfei was unhappy and said in a low voice, "Junior Sister Yao, what are you still standing there for? Why aren't you coming over?" Yao Xiangjuan approached Zhuowen and looked up at Yi Hanfei. She was neither servile nor overbearing. "Senior brother, Yi, I've already promised Long when that I'll go with him on this trip to the Door of Darkness. You're going with him? Although he has some strength, he's only the master of mystery. You'll be in much more danger if you follow him." Junior Sister Yao, don't be fooled by this person's flowery words. Follow him, Chao Kancheng, who was standing beside Yi Hanfei, hurriedly advised. Unfortunately, Yao Xiangjuan still shook her head and didn't agree. Junior brother Chao, there's no need to persuade me. We're leaving now. Yihan Fei snorted and left with Chao Kongsheng and the other outstanding disciples of the Yin and Yang divine sect. However, before he left, he shot a cold glance at Zhuowen and warned Yao Xiangjuan. Junior sister Yao, you'd better not regret your decision when you encounter danger in the door of darkness. Zhuowen also looked at Yao Xiangjuan in surprise. He didn't expect her to stand by his side so firmly. After all, with his new identity as Zhuowen, he had only known Yao Xiangjuan for 3 or 4 days. Long one, don't misunderstand. I'm doing this to repay you for saving my life. Don't get the wrong idea. Seeing Zhuowen looking over, Yao Xiangjuan explained calmly. And let's go. The door of darkness was now open. Right now, most of the cultivators from the alliance of the human and non-human races have already entered. The news will soon spread. When the time comes, all the cultivators in the dark ancient city will flock here. Zhuowen nodded, took Yao Xiangjuan, and rushed into the door of darkness along with the crowd. Walking into the door of darkness, Zhuowen discovered the magnificence of the door, like a towering mountain. This was especially so for the ancient aura emanating from the door. It was as if it had led Zhuo when past the boundaries of time and space to the ancient era when the door was still intact. He also saw the many people and things that had happened behind the door. Sure enough, there is a formation here, and this formation is so terrifying. Approaching the door of darkness, Zhuowen finally sensed the main formation that Senki Yin and the others had mentioned. Zhuowen was an eternal level array Dao master at the peak of the eternal level. He was not far from becoming an array Dao master at the 3rd step of the Dao confirming realm. However, he did not notice this array formation when he was outside. He only noticed it when he entered this door. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the formation on the door of darkness was. Moreover, the moment Zhuowen sensed this formation, he already knew that the mystery of this formation was far beyond his understanding. He had no doubt that if this formation was really activated, he would die without a burial place. There was no room for resistance at all. The moment Zhuowen stepped into the door of darkness, invisible ripples emerged from Zhuowen's body. Immediately, Zhuowen felt a terrifying suction force around him, forming a terrifying spiral vortex. Under this invisible suction force, Zhuowen was like a lonely boat in the sea, unable to borrow strength, and could only drift with the current. The moment Zhuowen was swallowed by the suction force, he immediately grabbed Yao Xiangjuan, but unfortunately, it was too late. The suction force came too fast. In the end, he only saw Yao Xiangjuan's stunned expression, and then everything went black. When Zhuowen woke up, he found that he was in a blood-red valley full of the smell of blood. Around the valley, there were sparse plants, but the strange thing was that these plants were also blood-red. Zhuowen raised his head and looked at the sky. He found that there was no sky here at all. Instead, it was replaced by blood red, as if the sky was covered with a boundless blood-red cloth. Looking around, Zhuowen frowned slightly, but he quickly calmed down. He knew that this should be the world inside the door of darkness. However, what made him frown was that this blood-red world was too strange. He couldn't distinguish north, south, east, or west at all. If it was another world, he could use the sun, moon, and stars to determine the correct direction. However, in this world, the sky was blood-red, and there wasn't even a single star. How could he determine his direction? Moreover, Zhuowen also found that there was no energy in this world. In other words, he couldn't absorb energy to maintain himself in this world. In this world, he could only squander energy, not absorb it. Moreover, the more energy he squandered, the less energy he had in his body. What a strange world. Zhuowen's heart sank. To cultivators, this world was simply hell. The energy here was simply too scarce. He could imagine that the longer a cultivator stayed in this world, not only would his cultivation not increase, but it would also regress. In the end, the cultivator would most likely become immortal without any cultivation. I can't stay here for long. I need to find an exit and leave this place. Zhuowen muttered to himself. He looked around and found that the scenery around him was blood red. He didn't know where to go. I can only use the art of heavenly divination. Zhuowen had no choice. He pointed with his right hand and used the art of heavenly divination to form an eye of the void above his head. Soon, the eye of the void collapsed, and Zhuowen's face was pale. Using the art of heavenly divination consumed one's lifespan. Zhuowen wouldn't use such a secret technique unless he had no other choice. Follow those plants. Chapter 2962. The 9 hills. 3 days later, Zhuowen stopped in a steep, blood-red valley. His eyes were sunken. Over the past 3 days, Zhuowen had been traveling in the direction with the most blood-red vegetation according to the art of divination. He originally thought that he would leave this strange place very quickly. However, he discovered that after leaving one valley, he would enter another. This process repeated itself like a cycle. After 3 days of traveling, Zhuowen's original body had used up almost 100th of his energy. It was only 100th of his original body's energy. To Zhuowen, it was not much at all. It could even be said to be insignificant. If he was in the outside world, he would only need a few seconds to recover from such a tiny amount of energy. However, this was not the case in the blood-red world. There was no energy of the heavenly ways here, as if it had been abandoned by the heavenly ways. He could not replenish the energy he had used up in the blood-red world at all. It was like it had completely vanished. If he wanted to recover, he would have to use the heavenly ways origin crystals in his body. Although Zhuowen had stored quite a lot of heavenly ways origin crystals in his major world, they were not endless. If he remained trapped in the blood-red world, he would not have enough heavenly ways origin crystals no matter how many he had. He would run out one day. Of course, it was not like Zhuowen did not discover anything in the past 3 days. He discovered that as he continued forward, more and more blood-red vegetation appeared in front of him, growing more and more luxuriant. Zhuowen carefully searched the mountain valley. After discovering that there was nothing in the mountain valley, he continued to move forward. This was still a blood-red valley, but it was different from the valley Zhuowen had come across before. 9 blood-red hills that resembled cow horns stood in the surroundings of the valley. What puzzled Zhuowen was that the 9 blood-red hills did not fit in with the surrounding valley. The blood-red color of the valley was innate. The rocks that formed the valley were a strange blood-red in the first place. However, the blood-red color of the 9 hills gave off an extremely pungent smell of blood. From the texture on the surface of the hill, it could be seen that the hill was not made of blood-red rocks. The color of the hill was dyed with blood. Moreover, Zhuowen also discovered that there was no path in front of this valley. There was a blood-colored rock wall that was like a natural moat in front of them. Zhuowen arrived in front of the crimson rock wall. He gently stroked the surface of the crimson rock wall with his right hand, feeling the uneven texture of the rock wall. An invisible ripple spread out. Zhuowen's gaze became very solemn as he slowly retreated. The moment he touched the blood-colored rock wall, he clearly felt the fluctuations of the restriction on the rock wall. Although the fluctuation of the restriction was very weak, Zhuowen's heart sank to the bottom. The fluctuation of the restriction just now made Zhuowen feel that this restriction was not ordinary. With his current level of array Dao, he could only see a part of this restriction. Obviously, the restriction arranged in this valley was of a higher level than his array Dao level. Zhuowen came to the center of the valley and sat down cross-legged. With a wave of his right hand, he summoned a beast bone array disc and arranged it around his body. He wanted to thoroughly explore the restriction in this valley so that he could find the right solution. After half a day, Zhuowen put away the beast bone array disc, and his gaze fell on the 9 blood-red hills that stood in 9 directions around the valley. After the deduction just now, he found that these 9 blood-red hills were the medium of the restriction arranged around the valley. The restriction was activated by these 9 hills. Zhuowen came to the blood-red hill closest to him. His right hand formed a fist and suddenly blasted out. A terrifying wind swept out and landed on the blood-red hill. Bang! With a muffled sound, dense ripples appeared on the surface of the blood-red hill. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and directly flew backward. He fell to the ground in a rather embarrassing manner and looked at the blood-red hill above him with a solemn expression. The surface of this blood-red hill has the peak of the Genesis Realm defensive formation. It's obviously impossible for me to break it with my strength. Moreover, the blow just now consumed 1/10 of my energy. Zhuowen muttered to himself with a pained expression. This was not the outside world, where there was an endless amount of heavenly energy to replenish his own energy. Here, every time he used an attack, the energy in his body would decrease by a little. With the power of the Pangu, sacred body of his doppelganger, it would not be a problem to forcibly break these 9 hills, but the consumption would be very large. He had just entered the door of darkness not long ago, and he had already wasted most of his energy on this restriction. Obviously, the gains did not make up for the losses. Thinking of this, Zhuowen no longer continued to attack. Instead, he sat around a blood-red hill and waved out beast bone array discs to begin cracking the restriction on the surface of this blood-red hill. Zhuowen was different from the ordinary formation Dao masters. He had the true alchemy array record with him. In addition, Zhuowen's comprehension was not weak. Moreover, he had been stuck at the peak of the eternal level for a long time. He planned to use the restriction in this valley to make a breakthrough in his formation Dao level in one fell swoop and reach a higher level. Time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, more than half a month had passed. During this period, Zhuowen basically sat in the center of the valley and waved out beast bone array discs to crack the 9 blood-red hills surrounding the valley. The restriction in this valley was indeed an extremely powerful god of creation stage formation. While Zhuowen was cracking this formation, he was also comprehending the operation trajectory and Taoist rhymes of the Genesis Realm formation. In the process of cracking this formation, he was constantly comprehending the true alchemy array record. His formation's Dao standard was currently rising at an inconceivable speed. Bang, bang, bang. 2 months passed. This time, Zhuowen stopped forming seals with his hands. He slowly opened his eyes, and a bright light erupted from the depths of his eyes. "Break!" Zhuowen softly shouted as he slowly withdrew his hands. The beast bone formation discs that were revolving around him all landed at his feet. At this moment, the entire valley began to tremble violently. Thump! Zhuowen suddenly stood up and took a step forward. Like a flying immortal, he swept out and arrived in front of one of the blood-red hills in an instant. Immediately, he held the beast bone array discs in his right hand and slammed them into the surface of the blood-red hill. Dense ripples appeared on the surface of the blood-red hill and swept out like a storm. The moment this fluctuation was set off, the beast bone disc array suddenly exploded, bursting out with even more terrifying energy, completely covering and submerging the energy ripples on the surface of the hill. Boom! On the other hand, countless cracks appeared on the blood-colored hill before it finally collapsed into countless fine rocks. After destroying this blood-red hill, Zhuowen moved like the wind and swept to the next blood-red hill and did the same. Chapter 2963. Strange flesh and Zhuowen stood silently above the valley with a look of enlightenment in his eyes. Ripples that were even more intense than the blood-red hill from before appeared around him. Looks like my formation Dao level has been elevated at this moment. I've finally reached the god of creation level. Zhuowen murmured with excitement in his eyes. At the same time, the blood-red rock wall at the very front of the valley actually began to squirm as if it had come alive. Roar! An earth-shattering roar resounded from the wriggling rock wall. Zhuowen focused his gaze and discovered that the blood-red rock wall wasn't a real rock wall. Instead, it was a mass of squirming flesh and blood. This mass of flesh and blood contained an extremely terrifying aura and energy. At this moment, it was squirming and rapidly rushing toward Zhuowen. As it rushed over, It even emitted a strange gurgling sound. When the mass of flesh and blood neared Zhuowen could clearly see that the surface of the mass of flesh and blood was covered with countless blood-red eyes. Just looking at it would probably give people with trypophobia goosebumps. Boom! Zhuowen's right hand clenched into a fist and violently punched out. The fist force was like an enraged dragon as it rumbled through the air. In the instant that Zhuowen's right fist landed on the mass of flesh and blood, his expression changed slightly. This was because he discovered that his fist seemed to have landed on cotton. There was nothing he could borrow strength from at all. Then, the mass of flesh and blood exploded into a boundless blood mist, which directly enveloped Zhuowen's entire body. Zhuowen didn't even think that something like this would happen. He was caught off guard and allowed the mass of flesh and blood to succeed. In the instant that the blood mist enshrouded Zhuowen, it immediately solidified into a mass of flesh and blood that enveloped Zhuowen's entire body. Zhuowen only felt his vision darken. An endless stench of blood rushed into his nostrils, causing him to involuntarily frown. He probed with his divine sense and discovered that his entire body had been wrapped in that strange mass of flesh and blood. His limbs were firmly sucked in by the force of the flesh and blood, making it difficult for him to move. Furthermore, the moment the flesh and blood attached to his body, it began to rapidly absorb the blood essence in his body through the surface of his skin. Seeing his blood essence being sucked away and his body becoming weaker and weaker, Zhuowen's eyes darkened. With a cold snort, he released his doppelganger in the great world. A black-clothed doppelganger flew out from the great world. Immediately, he formed a seal with both hands and used a profound meaning to create a chi blade. He gripped two gigantic white chi blades in his palms and immediately slashed out hundreds of times. The saber chi surged as if it was going to rush up into the sky and tear the sky apart. The strange mass of flesh and blood was directly blasted in a countless blood foam by the sky-opening blade and fell to the ground. Meanwhile, the original body took advantage of this opportunity to immediately escape. The main body staggered to the side and looked at the countless pieces of flesh that had turned into blood foam. His eyes were solemn as he said, "What the hell is this?" It actually directly absorbed the blood essence in my body. The main body's face was very pale. A lot of his blood essence had been absorbed, and even most of the energy in his body had been absorbed. Now, he was extremely weak and probably didn't even have the strength to stand up. In addition, there was no heavenly energy in this strange world at all. Therefore, he had no choice but to take out a portion of the heavenly Tao origin crystal from the great world and began to absorb the heavenly energy in the heavenly Tao origin crystal to replenish the energy that the main body had just lost. The doppelganger held the sky-opening blade in both hands and looked at the mass of flesh and blood that had been blasted into blood foam with great vigilance. This was because he discovered that the blood foam that had splattered on the ground was constantly wriggling, and then began to rapidly mix together to form the original appearance of the flesh and blood. The doppelganger didn't give the flesh and blood a chance to recombine. He took a step forward and quickly slashed out with the sky-opening blade in both hands. His speed was extremely fast, and the originally gathered flesh and blood once again collapsed into countless blood foam. Moreover, in order to prevent the blood foam from recombining, Zhuowen cut the flesh and blood even finer, almost insignificant. Even so, the flesh and blood still rapidly recombined as if they were undying. Zhuowen looked at the flesh and blood that had gathered together again with a grave expression. The flesh and blood was not very powerful, but it was very difficult to deal with. If it were any other time, Zhuowen wouldn't care about it at all. However, he couldn't replenish his heavenly energy here at all. Every battle consumed a lot of his energy. If the flesh and blood continued to tangle with each other, even his doppelganger would probably die at the hands of the strange flesh and blood. Zhuowen swung the sky-opening blade again. After blasting the flesh and blood into countless pieces, he took a step forward, brushing past the dense blood foam as he began to flee. After the bloody wall turned into the strange mass of flesh and blood, the scene behind the wall was exposed. It was a completely different world from where Zhuowen was. Outside the wall was a boundless, lush grassland, forming a stark contrast with the bloody valley he was in. This should be the exit. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with ecstasy. He sped up and rushed out of the bloody valley, entering the lush grassland. However, the excitement on Zhuowen's face quickly disappeared. This was because he discovered that after entering the lush grassland, he actually discovered that there was still no heavenly energy around him. The situation was no different from the bloody valley from before. It was just that the scenery had changed, but the essence hadn't changed. Looks like I was happy for nothing. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. He knew that he still hadn't walked out of this strange world. He had only come to a different area of this strange world. The art of heaven's divination only calculated the exit of the bloody valley, but didn't calculate the real exit of this strange world. Zhuowen sighed softly. He was in a daze, but a roar woke him up. He raised his head and discovered that at the border between the grassland and the bloody valley, a strange mass of flesh and blood was roaring madly in Zhuowen's direction, as if Zhuowen owed it a huge debt. However, the mass of flesh and blood was very wary of the grassland outside the valley. It only roared at the edge, not daring to take half a step out of the valley into the grassland. Zhuowen silently watched the actions of the mass of flesh and pondered. It seemed that there was a limit to the mass of flesh and blood. It couldn't take half a step out of the valley. Zhuowen no longer paid attention to the madly roaring mass of flesh and blood. Instead, he turned around and looked in another direction of the grassland with a grave expression. He now had some guesses about this strange world. This world should be similar to other ordinary worlds, with various landforms and sceneries. The bloody valley he had entered for the first time was probably one of the landforms in this world. Now that he had walked out of the bloody valley, he naturally entered a different landform. Chapter 2964. Explosive destruction formation. Zhuowen did not move forward directly. Instead, he sat cross-legged and took out some heavenly way origin crystals from the macro world to restore the energy that his doppelganger and true body had consumed. There were many heavenly way origin crystals in the macro world and even more divine herbs. However, Zhuowen did not dare to squander them. Who knew how long he would stay in this world? After his doppelganger and true body were restored, he put his true body into the macro world and summoned the blood fairy sword. Whoosh! However, as soon as the blood fairy sword appeared, it sent him a message with divine thought, asking where this place was. Because the blood fairy sword felt powerless as soon as it appeared in this world. It was even difficult to maintain the flying sword. Zhuowen briefly explained this world to the blood fairy sword, then summoned the thunder fire sword and the death sacrifice sword. However, the two swords were in the same situation as the blood fairy sword. They had an unprecedented sense of powerlessness in this world. Zhuowen's heart sank. He knew that divine artifacts were completely suppressed in this world. In other words, he could not use divine artifacts in this world. Although Zhuowen's clone cultivated the Pangu's sacred body and rarely used divine artifacts under normal circumstances, his original body did not have such a strong physical body. When the original body attacked, he had to rely on divine artifacts to unleash more powerful attacks. Now, the three divine swords could not operate normally in this world. His true body had lost a great help. After Zhuowen had completely recovered, he waved his sleeve and took out 9 beast bone formation discs from the macro world. He began to refine a formation. The formation he was refining this time was called the Explosive Destruction Formation. It was a Genesis level formation. The activation of the Explosive Destruction Formation was very convenient. After Zhuowen finished the formation, he left a trace of divine thought on it. As long as his divine thought moved, the formation would immediately explode and sweep up a terrifying power. This was the first Genesis level formation that Zhuowen had learned from the true elixir formation record after he became a Genesis level formation master. It's done. Zhuowen opened his right hand, revealing a dark, oval-shaped object lying quietly in his palm. It had to be said that the shape of the explosion array was very similar to the grenades on Earth. Of course, the former's power was much more terrifying than a grenade's. If it was completely detonated, even a god of creation who had stepped into the first stage of the third step of Tao validation would die. Zhuowen stayed on the grassland for about 3 days and 3 nights, refining 9 explosive destruction arrays. With these 9 explosive destruction arrays, Zhuowen felt more confident. However, if he didn't encounter any great danger on this grassland, these 9 explosive destruction arrays could be easily dealt with. After doing all this, Zhuowen once again used the art of divine calculation to calculate a direction, then reorganized and set off again. A month later, Zhuowen stopped on top of a small hill. His eyes fell on the small hill in front of him, and his expression changed greatly. In the distance in front of the small slope, there were densely packed black shadows that were constantly wriggling. These black shadows were actually a group of black ants. These black ants were as big as a human head. They were so densely packed that they almost completely dyed the grassland in front of the small slope black. Based on the crawling trajectory of these black ants, it could be seen that they were very anxious and full of hostility. After taking a closer look, Zhuowen discovered that in the center of these black ants, there was a group of cultivators who were struggling to resist the encirclement of these black ants. This group of cultivators consisted of 7 people, 3 men and 4 women. All of them were doing their best to activate their heavenly Tao power to resist the black ants around them. The black ants were killed one by one, and their corpses fell to the ground. Soon, they were covered by the black ants behind them. This group of black ants came one after another, and there was no end to them. The 7 of them were having a very difficult time resisting. They were like a lone boat in the middle of the waves, tottering on the verge of collapse. It wouldn't be long before the 7 of them were completely wiped out and eaten by the black ants. Zhuowen didn't want to pay attention to them, but his gaze inadvertently caught a familiar figure in this group of people. Junior sister Yao. Zhuowen fell into the group of 7. Standing at the back was a beautiful woman. Wasn't this woman Yao Xiangjuan, who had separated from Zhuowen in the door of darkness? Zhuowen's eyes flickered, and he sighed softly. With his personality, he wouldn't meddle in other people's business. After all, everyone in this world was in danger, and his abilities were extremely limited. If he meddled too much, he would lose an opportunity. However, he couldn't ignore Yao Xiangjuan. Thinking of this, Zhuowen jumped down and rushed into the black ant swarm in front of him. The dense black ant swarm also sensed the human coming from afar. They all screeched, and a portion of the black ants quickly rushed toward Zhuowen like a surging black wave. In the center of the black ant swarm, the 7 cultivators were in despair. There were simply too many black ants around them, and they couldn't kill them all. Moreover, this world didn't have heavenly Tao energy. The energy they lost in battle could only be recovered through the heavenly Tao origin crystals or divine medicine in their spirit rings. Thus, the more they fought, the weaker their bodies became. In the end, they definitely wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being killed by the black ant swarm. Senior Brother Jiang, what should we do now? A delicate female cultivator was so scared that tears flowed out of her eyes. She was in a daze as she looked at the tall and sturdy man holding a long sword at the front. Among the 7 of them, this man's cultivation was undoubtedly the most powerful. He was already at the early stage of the God of Creation stage. The long sword in his hand had dimmed, and it no longer had the heavenly Tao energy of a divine weapon. Although the power of divine weapons was completely suppressed in this world, this man was most likely proficient in using swords. Thus, even though the divine sword in his hand no longer had any heavenly Tao energy, he was still able to use it to kill enemies. This senior brother Jiang was no stranger to Zhuowen. He was Jiang Qixing, one of the 5 freaks of the host region that he had seen at the 10 Extreme Corp Sex Freak Banquet. At this moment, although Jiang Qixing's expression was calm, he was extremely anxious on the inside. He didn't know how to answer that delicate female cultivator's question. Could it be that we're going to die here today? We just entered the door of darkness not long ago. We thought that we would be able to obtain many treasures in return with a bountiful harvest. Who would have thought that we would enter such a torturous hell? If I had known that the other side of the door of darkness was like this, I wouldn't have entered even if you beat me to death. The remaining cultivators in the group of 7 all had expressions of despair on their faces as they complained incessantly. Yao Xiangjuan stood at the very back of the group. Her slender hand formed a palm and suddenly blasted out. After repelling the black ants that were attacking from behind, her brows furrowed slightly. Fine beads of sweat had already covered her pristine forehead. Her heart was heavy. She knew that if this continued, they would undoubtedly die. However, she soon discovered that the attacks of the black ants around them had weakened. To be more precise, the number of black ants had decreased. Look, someone is charging toward us. Chapter 2965. Black Ant Swarm. Bang, bang, bang. The speed of this figure was simply too fast. Wherever it passed, the densely packed black ants would all let out shrill cries as they were all sent flying. They were simply unable to block the charge of this figure. When the figure approached, everyone saw that it was a young man with 2 scars on his face. The young man's body emitted a crystal-clear light as if he was carved out of jade. Whenever the black ants rushed at the young man, they were blasted away by his terrifying physical body. How did this guy do it? In the team, the delicate female cultivator opened her mouth and looked at the young man in disbelief. They had fought with the black ants for a while and knew how difficult it was to deal with them. The black ants' main attack method was the pair of sharp teeth in their mouths. They were like the sharpest weapons in the world, breaking their defenses time and time again. They were exhausted from running for their lives. Surrounded by many black ants, the 7 of them worked together to barely resist the attacks of the black ants, but they couldn't hold on for long. However, this person was too abnormal. He rushed directly into the swarm and didn't fear the attacks of the ants at all. He resisted all the attacks of the ants and rushed toward them. Jiang Qixing looked at the scarred young man with a grave gaze. He was a little puzzled. He didn't know this person, so why would he risk coming to save them? Yao Xiangjuan, who was at the back of the team, finally saw the true face of the figure. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but widen. Long one, Yao Xiangjuan muttered to herself. She was in disbelief, surprised, and happy. She was surprised because the black ants here were too big. She was a little worried about Zhuowen, but she was happy because she could meet Long One again so soon. Back when she entered the door of darkness, she immediately separated from Zhuowen. After entering this world, she encountered many dangers. Later, she met Jiang Qixing and the others and formed a team with them. Until now, when they encountered the black ants, they were in a life-and-death crisis. It was naturally a pleasant surprise for Yao Xiangjuan to meet someone familiar in such a life-and-death situation. Boom! Zhuowen suddenly punched out and blasted away the ants in front of him. He took a step forward and arrived in front of Jiang Qixing's team. His Panga's sacred body had a natural advantage. His strong defense allowed him to ignore the attacks of these black ants. That was why he could reach the center of the black ants in such a short time. However, this was extremely taxing on Zhuowen. By the time he reached the core area of the black ant swarm, most of his doppelganger's energy had already been depleted. The crystalline glow on his physical body had also dimmed. Zhuowen frantically took out piles of heavenly Tao origin crystal from his great world and absorbed their energy. As he recovered his energy, he blasted away all the black ants in front of him. Fate space-time kill, break for me. Zhuowen pointed a finger with his right hand. Immediately, an endless purple river rushed out from the space behind him and swept towards the group of ants in the core region. The moment the ants were engulfed by the purple river, they all strangely stopped crawling. Then, they all strangely fell to the ground, motionless. They had all died. The moment the purple river raged, 2/3 of the black ants in the core inexplicably died. Jiang Qixing, Yao Xiangjuan, and the others, who were originally suffocated by the black ants in the core, suddenly felt the pressure on them lighten. They looked at Zhuowen with eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you for saving us, fellow Taoist." Jiang Qixing hurriedly stepped forward, cupped his hands to Zhuowen, and said in a deep voice. Zhuowen waved his hand and did not say anything to Jiang Qixing. Instead, he stepped in front of Yao Xiangjuan and said, "Junior sister Yao, it's dangerous here. Come with me." With that, Zhuowen grabbed Yao Xiangjuan's jade-like hand and rushed outside. Yao Xiangjuan did not refuse and let Zhuowen pull her. To be honest, the scarred young man in front of her did not hesitate to come and save her after discovering that she was deeply trapped in the ant colony. It was enough to show that this person really cared about her. This action made Yao Xiangjuan have a good impression of Zhuowen. Her previous bad impression of him had turned into a good one. When Jiang Qixing saw the scarred young man who had saved them pull Yao Xiangjuan away as soon as he arrived, they knew that this person had not come to save them, but Yao Xiangjuan. Saving them was probably just a matter of convenience. Although it was just a matter of convenience, they were still very grateful. After all, if it were not for this person, they would have completely fallen under the endless attack of the black ants and died gloriously. "Senior Brother Jiang, what should we do next?" When the delicate female cultivator saw that the scarred young man did not come to save them, there was a touch of disappointment in her beautiful eyes. "Follow this person. If we follow him, our chances of breaking out will greatly increase." Jiang Qixing made a prompt decision and led everyone to follow closely behind Zhuowen. Zhuowen pulled Yao Xiangjuan and continued to rush outside. Naturally, he also noticed Jiang Qixing and the others behind him. However, he did not care. If Jiang Qixing and the others could keep up with his footsteps, he did not mind helping them. If they could not keep up, then they could not blame him. Soon, Zhuowen stopped and looked ahead with an unsightly expression. Not far ahead, layers of black ants were stacked in front of them like a tall black wall, blocking their way. The number of black ants seems to be even more than before. Yao Xiangjuan's face turned pale and her delicate body trembled slightly as she looked at the dense and seemingly endless black ants in front of her. Jiang Qixing and the others who were following behind also saw the terrifying scene in front of them. Their faces were as pale as snow. Zhuowen showed a thoughtful expression. He felt that the appearance of these black ants was a little strange. Although the black ants were huge and numerous earlier, there were not as many as there were now. After he rescued Yao Xiangjuan and the others, the number of black ants suddenly increased. It was like a human army calling for reinforcements after knowing that they were at a disadvantage. If this was the case, then there must be a leader somewhere secretly directing the actions of these black ants. Thinking of this, Zhuowen's glabella flashed with a golden light, releasing a powerful and continuous divine sense. After being nourished by the Panga banner, his divine sense had an extremely terrifying penetrating power, much sharper and more powerful than that of ordinary cultivators. His divine sense radiated out layer by layer, enveloping the entire area where the black ants were, and then went deep into the ground layer by layer. "Brother, the black ants are about to attack." Jiang Qixing could not help but remind Zhuowen when he saw that he suddenly stopped in front of him, as if in a daze. However, Zhuowen turned a deaf ear to him and just stood there motionless. Chapter 2966. Dan Xiaqingyang read the black ant swarm was getting closer and closer. Jiang Qixing and the others were all rousing the energy in their bodies, preparing to face the approaching black ant swarm. However, their faces were pale. The black ant swarm this time was much larger and more terrifying than the previous one. Just now, they had a slim chance of survival. Now that they had consumed a lot of energy, they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold on for long if they encountered an even more terrifying black ant swarm. When the black ant swarm was about to reach them, Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes, grabbed Yao Xiangjuan's hand, and quickly retreated. He shouted to Jiang Qixing and the others, "Retreat!" There was no need for Zhuowen's reminder. The moment he retreated, Jiang Qixing and the others had already retreated. As Zhuowen flew backwards, he threw the explosion extermination array into the swarm of ants. With a thought, the explosion extermination array exploded with a loud bang. Rumble. The terrifying sound of the explosion resounded through the sky. The dense swarm of ants in front of them was attacked and swallowed by the terrifying explosion wave, and shrill screams could be heard incessantly. High up in the sky, a terrifying mushroom cloud rose. Waves of air surged, and the entire grassland exploded violently. It was very terrifying. Zhuowen, Yao Xiangjuan, Jiang Qixing, and the others were directly pushed back by the powerful air waves. They flew back for thousands of meters before landing on the ground. Zhuowen was still fine. He borrowed the force of the air and pulled Yao Xiangjuan to land steadily. Jiang Qixing, on the other hand, was in a rather sorry state. He staggered for a while after landing on the ground. Fortunately, he controlled his body and barely managed to stand. On the other hand, the others in Jiang Qixing's team fell directly on their butts. They were in a very sorry state. After all, the battle with the black ant swarm was too intense. They had consumed too much energy and their bodies were too weak. Explosive destruction formation? You're a Genesis Divine Array Master? When Jiang Qixing saw the terrifying explosion in the distance, his gaze fell on Zhuowen, full of surprise. Zhuowen didn't answer Jiang Qixing's question. Instead, he said, "You guys better be careful. These black ants are probably being controlled by something. They'll come back soon. You guys stay here and recover. I need to go underground to find out what's controlling these black ants." Jiang Qixing's face was full of embarrassment when he heard this. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. "What's wrong?" Zhuowen couldn't help but ask. Brother, do you still have Heavenly Tao origin crystals on you? Can I borrow some?" "Don't worry, I'm a disciple of the Sunseeker Temple, a Tao Palace-level force in the host region. I won't refuse to return the money." After Jiang Qixing finished speaking, his cheeks reddened in embarrassment. He was one of the 5 great monsters of the Eastern Tao region and the strongest genius of the Sunseeker Shrine. He had never lacked Heavenly Law origin crystals, let alone borrow them from others. This was his first time borrowing a Heavenly Law origin crystal from someone else, so he was naturally a little embarrassed. Brother Jiang, you're a genius of the Sunseeker Shrine, right? Don't you have any Heavenly Law origin crystals on you?" Zhuowen asked in surprise. Jiang Qixing's expression became even more awkward. He rubbed his nose and laughed dryly. "I originally had quite a few Heavenly Law origin crystals on me, but in the month we entered the Door of Darkness, we encountered many dangers and went through many battles. That's why the Heavenly Law origin crystals were all used up. Brother Jiang, the value of Heavenly Law origin crystals in the outside world is ordinary, but I'm afraid you know better than me how important they are here," Zhuowen said indifferently. Jiang Qixing's expression became even more awkward. Zhuowen was right. In this strange world where Heavenly Law energy was scarce, Heavenly Law origin crystals were indeed very important and could be said to be priceless. Jiang Qixing gritted his teeth and said, "Brother Long, as long as you can lend me some Heavenly Law origin crystals, I, Jiang Qixing, am willing to use the Sunseeker Shrine as a guarantee and agree to one of your requests." Brother Jiang, although your status in the Sunseeker Shrine is high, you can't represent the Sunseeker Shrine. Zhuowen shook his head, feeling that Jiang Qixing was overestimating himself. Longwen, you probably don't know Jiang Qixing's status in the Sunseeker Shrine. Not only is he the #1 genius of the Sunseeker Shrine, he's also the most beloved son of the current sect master and the best candidate for the next sect master. It can be said that Jiang Qixing's status in the Sunseeker Shrine is second only to one and above all. Yao Xiangjuan softly said to Zhuowen, "Brother Long, please. I'm indeed the son of the Sunseeker Shrine's sect master and also the next sect master that my father personally appointed. I still have a lot of authority in the Sunseeker Shrine. As long as I can do it, I'll help you even if I have to die 1,000 times, Jiang Qixing hurriedly said. Zhuowen pondered for a moment and then said, Brother Jiang, I need a divine heaven-grade herb right now. Does your Sunseeker Shrine have such a herb? Jiang Qixing's expression immediately turned ugly. A divine heaven-grade herb was really too precious. An ordinary Dao Palace faction might not necessarily have such a high-grade herb. In Jiang Qixing's opinion, Zhuowen was asking for too much. If you don't have it, then forget it. Zhuowen shook his head and then threw nearly 100 heavenly Dao origin crystals to Jiang Qixing. I'll give you these heavenly Dao origin crystals. It'll be enough for you to recover some of your Yuan Qi. Also, you should leave this place as soon as possible. The black ants shouldn't be so easy to deal with. Jiang Qixing put away the heavenly Dao origin crystals that Zhuowen handed over. His eyes narrowed because he found that these were all supreme-grade heavenly Dao origin crystals that Zhuowen had given him. Thank you, Brother Long. If you have time in the future, I hope you can come to the Sunseeker Shrine as a guest. Jiang Qixing hurriedly thanked him. Zhuowen waved his hand and didn't mind. He really wasn't familiar with Jiang Qixing and the Sunseeker Shrine. This time, it was just a small matter. He naturally wouldn't really go to the Sunseeker Shrine in the future. Brother Long, there's one thing I still want to tell you. Our Sunseeker Shrine does indeed have a divine heaven-grade herb, Jiang Qixing said with some hesitation. What? Your Sunseeker Shrine has a divine heaven-grade herb? What kind of herb is it? Zhuowen's pupil shrank as he hurriedly asked. It seems to be called Red Sun Pill, Jiang Qixing said with some uncertainty. Zhuowen showed a look of ecstasy. Red Sun Pill was one of the 6 divine heaven-grade herbs used to refine the 6 desires spirit-condensing Saint Pill. However, Zhuowen quickly calmed down. He knew that a divine herb of this level must be an extremely precious treasure in the Sunseeker Shrine. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that it was the most precious treasure of the Sunseeker Shrine. It definitely couldn't be given to an outsider. However, this thing was too important to Zhuowen. It was the key to whether or not he could awaken Moyan of Wushang. Can you give me the divine herb of your Sunseeker Shrine? Don't worry. I will take out something not inferior to the value of this divine herb in exchange for it, Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Chapter 2967. Buddha Yellow Water Bamboo, Jiang Qixing said somewhat embarrassedly. Brother Long, in fact, this green sun red used to be the most precious thing in our sun-chasing temple, but not anymore. What do you mean? Zhuowen asked doubtfully. The green sun red was inadvertently obtained by the 3rd sect master of our sun-chasing temple. Because it was too precious, it had always been planted in the forbidden area of the sect. But later on, the forbidden area changed and became a land of death. The pale glow cyan red sun also gradually withered, and the medicinal properties within it were almost all lost. Right now, it is only a superficial appearance. Jiang Qixing shrugged helplessly. What do you mean all the medicinal properties have been lost? Zhuowen frowned slightly, his face a little ugly. The most important thing about a divine medicine was its medicinal properties. Without medicinal properties, no matter how high its grade was, it was no different from chicken ribs. Now, the green sun red has become an ornamental object in our sect. Apart from that, it has no other use. If Brother Long really wants it, I can give it to you, Jiang Qixing said embarrassedly and hurriedly added, Of course, apart from that, I will also compensate Brother Long with other things. Please don't misunderstand. Zhuowen was a little speechless. If the green sun red really had no medicinal properties, it really wouldn't be of much use to him, but he didn't want to give it up. Zhuowen cupped his fists at Jiang Qixing and said, Then I'll have to trouble Brother Jiang. After the Door of Darkness is over, Longwen will personally pay a visit. I hope Brother Jiang can fulfill your promise at that time. Jiang Qixing hurriedly returned the greeting and said, This Jiang is more than happy to have Brother Long come to visit. I welcome Brother Long at any time. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, a terrifying tremor came from the grassland in front of them. Immediately, Zhuowen and the others were shocked to find that the number of black ants in front of them had increased. They were densely packed together, and their numbers were even more ferocious than the previous 2 times. What the hell are these things? Can't we kill them all? Jiang Qixing almost cursed. These black ants were really too strange. You guys go first. Also, bring junior sister Yao with you. I'll catch up with you later. Zhuowen glanced at Yao, Xiangjuan beside him, then took the lead and rushed towards the ant swarm. Yao Xiangjuan looked at Zhuowen's back and was suddenly stunned. This time, she felt that Longwen's back was too similar to the Zhuowen she knew. If she wasn't sure that Longwen wasn't Zhuowen, Yao Xiangjuan would have easily confused the two of them. Junior sister Yao, don't look anymore. Brother Long is already far away. Let's escape first. The black ants will catch up to us soon. Jiang Qixing quickly reminded Yao Xiangjuan when he saw her staring at Zhuowen's back in a daze. Yao Xiangjuan came back to her senses and nodded. She followed Jiang Qixing and the others and fled to the other side of the grassland. Zhuowen came to the front of the densely packed ant swarm with a sneer. He took out another explosion array and threw it into the ant swarm, then immediately drilled into the depths of the ground. When he reached a certain depth, with a single thought, the explosion extermination array completely exploded. An earth-shattering explosion resounded from the ground. Zhuowen didn't pay attention to the results of the explosion array and continued to go deeper into the ground. His divine sense was like a radar, constantly radiating towards the deepest part of the ground. Just now, he had investigated and found that there was definitely something in the depths of the ground that was controlling the movements of the black ants above the grassland. Soon, he locked onto a direction and rushed in that direction like a fish. In the deepest part of the grassland, there was a natural cave. The cave was very large, about the size of dozens of football fields. In the center of the cave, there was a bamboo that was only as thick as an index finger. However, this asparagus was not emerald green, but golden yellow. This asparagus bamboo had 9 segments. Above the golden bamboo, there was a dense golden mist. This golden mist constantly rolled and intertwined, forming a phantom of a Buddha. Moreover, this cave was different from the outside world. There was an extremely rich heavenly energy, and this heavenly energy mainly came from the golden bamboo growing in the center of the cave. At this moment, next to the golden bamboo, there was a thumb-sized golden ant lying on the side of the bamboo. It seemed to be silently absorbing the heavenly energy emitted by the golden bamboo, and there was a human-like expression of enjoyment and satisfaction on its face. Boom! Suddenly, in the southeast corner of the cave, a figure broke into the cave and immediately attracted the attention of the golden ant. This figure was none other than Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen immediately focused his attention on the golden bamboo in the center of the cave. His whole body seemed to be struck by lightning, and he was stunned on the spot. But soon, Zhuowen laughed and his eyes showed excitement. Buddha yellow water bamboo? It's actually Buddha yellow water bamboo. Zhuowen muttered to himself excitedly. This Buddha yellow water bamboo was also one of the 6 divine herbs used to refine the 6 desires spirit condensing saint pill. Its value was no different from the red sun pill that Jiang Qixing had mentioned before. But in next to no time, Zhuowen felt a strand of a feeling of danger. He turned around and noticed a thumb-sized golden ant by the side of the Buddha yellow water bamboo was staring at him with a hostile expression. This golden ant was gilded as if it was forged from gold. Although it was not big, the aura that flowed out of its body made Zhuowen very wary. It seems that this guy should be the behind-the-scenes commander of the black ant swarm. Zhuowen's eyes flickered as he looked at the Buddha yellow water bamboo next to the golden ant with a look of understanding. No wonder Jiang Qixing, Yao Xiangjuan, and the others were attacked by so many black ants after entering this grassland area. It seemed that it was because there was actually a heaven-level divine medicine Buddha yellow water bamboo underground in this grassland area. Obviously, When Jiang Qixing and the others entered this grassland, the Ant King thought that this group of humans was here to seize the Buddha yellow water bamboo underground. That was why it desperately summoned the black ants to attack Jiang Qixing and the others. While Zhuan was observing the Golden Ant King, the Ant King's black pearl-like eyes were also staring straight at Zhuan. Its eyes were filled with a trace of doubt. The natural cave it was in was extremely hidden. Back then, it had spent a lot of effort to finally find this cave and the Buddha yellow water bamboo that lived in the center of the cave. This human had only entered this grassland not long ago, but he was actually able to find the Buddha yellow water bamboo that it was guarding in such a short period of time. Hiss! Suddenly, the golden ant let out a strange hiss, and the huge cave around it trembled violently. Then, many small holes appeared on the surface of the cave. Chapter 2968. Golden Ant King Hiss. Hiss, 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 hiss. Zhuowen's expression was very ugly, but his movements were not slow. His right foot suddenly stomped in the air, and a terrifying wave of air spread out from the bottom of his foot. Soon after, an earth-shattering explosion sounded out. The Golden Ant King seemed to have sensed Zhuowen's intentions, and anger appeared in its eyes. It was angry that this human was too bold. Even in a time like this, he actually dared to come and snatch the Buddha yellow water bamboo that it valued the most. At this moment, Zhuowen clenched his fists and punched at the Golden Ant King, who was guarding the Buddha yellow water bamboo. He didn't dare to hold back in this punch. He unleashed all the power of the peak 5-star Pangu sacred body. The Golden Ant King also let out a hiss. Its golden body released a dazzling light that was like the sun. Soon after, its golden body, which was not very big, began to rapidly spin like a golden electric drill. Boom! Zhuowen's fist force collided with the Golden Ant King. Immediately after, a terrifying shockwave exploded, and the entire cave shook violently as if it was about to collapse. Thud, thud, thud. Zhuowen couldn't help but retreat again and again. His right fist had actually become distorted. In the battle, just now, his right fist had been directly hit by the Golden Ant King and had actually been injured. As for the Golden Ant King, although it was knocked back by the powerful fist energy, it was completely unscathed. It was completely unscathed and full of vigor. Moreover, after the Golden Ant King was blasted away, its tiny eyes were filled with excitement and bloodlust. It looked at Zhuowen with a gaze filled with the joy of hunting prey. Clearly, it had already treated Zhuowen as a relatively fun prey. Whoosh! The moment the Golden Ant King stabilized its body, it once again turned into a golden stream of light and quickly rushed toward Zhuowen. It didn't intend to give Zhuowen a chance to breathe at all. Fortunately, Zhuowen's Panga's sacred body had a super self-healing ability. When the Golden Ant King continued to attack, Zhuowen's distorted right fist had almost recovered. Bang! The two of them collided again. Zhuowen was still at a disadvantage, and this time, it was even more serious. The bones of his right forearm were all twisted and dislocated, looking very deformed. Zhuowen snorted coldly, and his eyes were cold. His distorted right forearm began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bang! 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 The Golden Ant King didn't slow down. It continued to rush over and immediately collided with Zhuowen again. After several collisions, Zhuowen was basically at a disadvantage. Moreover, the injuries on his body were getting more and more serious and horrifying. In the end, Zhuowen's clothes were tattered and blood was flowing out. He was in an extremely sorry state. If it weren't for his Pangu sacred body's extremely powerful self-healing ability, he would have been killed by the Golden Ant King many times. This made Zhuowen's heart sink to the bottom. The Golden Ant King's strength was too extraordinary. In a one-on-one fight, Zhuowen was no match for it all. Originally, Zhuowen could still use the Heavenly Arrow to deal with the Golden Ant King. However, this world was too strange. A divine weapon couldn't play any role here. The Ho-E Heavenly Arrow and the Ho-E Heavenly Bow were indeed very powerful. However, both of them were divine weapons. In this world, the Ho-E Heavenly Bow and the Ho-E Heavenly Arrow were obviously of little value. Not only that, the Yama ghost diagram that Zhuowen had tried so hard to obtain couldn't be used in this world. This made Zhuowen very depressed. Zhuowen looked at the Buddha yellow water bamboo that was still growing in the center of the cave and the golden ant king that was crazily attacking in front of him. His eyes lit up, and he immediately began to retreat to the edge of the cave. When the golden ant king saw that the human in front of it was beginning to retreat, a trace of disdain appeared in its eyes. However, its attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. It looked like it wouldn't stop until it killed Zhuowen. Zhuowen also felt that the golden ant king's attacks had suddenly become fierce. His face was very ugly. His resistance was like a lonely boat in the sea, on the verge of capsizing. Finally, Zhuowen reluctantly approached the edge of the cave. He saw that the black ants guarding the edge of the cave were all baring their teeth at Zhuowen and blocking his path. However, they didn't attack Zhuowen. After all, they didn't dare to do anything without the Ant King's order. They could only stand at the edge of the cave and block Zhuowen's path of retreat. Hiss! The Golden Ant King landed near Zhuowen. It was in no hurry to continue attacking. Instead, it studied the human young man before it like a human. The mockery in its eyes became heavier and heavier. Zhuowen stared at the Golden Ant King silently, but his mind wasn't on the Ant King. Instead, it was on the Buddha yellow water bamboo in the center of the cave. With the difference between him and the Golden Ant King, he knew that trying to snatch it from the Ant King's hands would be suicidal. Moreover, there was a very high chance that he would die at the Ant King's hands. As a result, the only feasible method right now was to use his space-time powers to immediately take the Buddha yellow water bamboo in the center of the cave. Then, he would have to leave the cave immediately. When Zhuowen first entered the cave, the Golden Ant King had been guarding the Buddha yellow water bamboo the entire time. So Zhuowen didn't dare to use his space-time powers to steal it. The main point of this method was to catch the Ant King off guard. If he failed, the Ant King would immediately be on guard. There was basically no chance of him using it again. Now that Zhuowen had lured the Ant King away, it was the perfect time for Zhuowen to use his space-time powers to take the Buddha yellow water bamboo away and then leave the cave. When Zhuowen reached the edge of the cave, he formed a seal with his right hand and extended a finger. Immediately, the space around him seemed to distort. Chapter 2969. Pursuit. The Golden Ant King was stunned. It stared at the empty center of the cave, as if it had been struck by lightning. Zhuowen took advantage of the moment when the Golden Ant King was stunned to take out an explosion formation from his spirit ring and toss it over without any hesitation. Rumble. A terrifying explosion rang out as the entire cave shook violently. Soon after, countless rocks piled up like mountains and fell down. It was quite a spectacular sight. The edge of the cave where Zhuowen was blasted into a huge crater by the terrifying explosion. The black ants in front of Zhuowen were naturally blasted into pieces by the terrifying explosion. Zhuowen took advantage of this opportunity to twist his waist and crawl out of the natural cave. The Golden Ant King was furious. It had guarded the Buddha yellow water bamboo for countless years and had obtained great benefits from it. When it had first discovered the Buddha yellow water bamboo, it had not matured yet. It was the Golden Ant King that had guarded it until it matured. Moreover, the Buddha yellow water bamboo had only matured for a short period of time. Even immature Buddha yellow water bamboo could bring it so many benefits. If it had continued to cultivate beside the Buddha yellow water bamboo for hundreds or thousands of years, its strength would definitely have been able to break through to a higher level and evolve to a higher level. However, the Buddha yellow water bamboo had disappeared. Its future was basically gone. How could the Golden Ant King not be furious? The Golden Ant King was pushed into the wall of the cave by the explosion of the explosion formation. It was embedded in the wall. However, the Golden Ant King's body was very terrifying. It was not affected too much. Hiss! Hiss! The Golden Ant King let out a furious roar. It shot out of the wall and immediately chased out of the cave. As for the surviving black ants, they quickly attacked under the command of the Golden Ant King. At this moment, on the grassland outside, a dense swarm of black ants could be seen burrowing out of the grassland. They were like black clouds pressing down on a city as they quickly chased after a figure. The instant Zhuowen left the cave, he immediately took out the space-time roulette. He pushed it with all his might and turned into a streak of light as he shot into the distance. As for the black ant swarm behind him, his heart sank because he realized that the black ant swarm was extremely fast. He tried his best to activate the space-time roulette, but he couldn't shake off the black ant swarm completely. At the very front of the black ants was an exceptionally dazzling golden light. It was the Golden Ant King. The Golden Ant King's black eyes had turned blood red. It discovered that it was actually unable to catch up to the human in front of it, which made it even more anxious. The Golden Ant King let out another shrill cry, and the black ants behind it began to squirm, forming a gigantic black longsword in midair. This huge black sword was formed by countless black ants. Whoosh! The Golden Ant King stood on the tip of the black sword. In an instant, the black sword left the bowstring. It was extremely fast, as if it could shatter the sky. Its speed instantly increased by a lot, and it actually quickly closed the distance between it and Zhuowen. Zhuowen felt the terrifying wind behind him, and his expression changed drastically. The black sword quickly approached him. In a few breaths of time, it was already not far behind Zhuowen. The terrifying wind was like the sharpest blade, causing his entire body to hurt as if it was being cut by a blade. This caused Zhuowen's heart to sink even further. Just the wind that had spread out was already so terrifying, so there was no need to mention how terrifying the power of the black longsword as the main body of this attack was. Thinking to this point, Zhuowen took out another explosive destruction array and threw it at the black sword behind him. Boom! The explosion annihilation array exploded, and a terrifying explosive energy burst out like a volcano eruption. The black sword behind him only paused for a few breaths of time amidst the terrifying explosive energy, and then continued to chase after Zhuowen. What was even more inconceivable to Zhuowen was that the explosive destruction array did not cause much damage to the black sword. Zhuowen threw out several explosive destruction arrays in succession, only to slow down the black sword behind him. However, he knew that if this continued, the black sword would definitely be able to catch up to him when the explosive destruction array was exhausted. However, Zhuowen was very calm. When he entered the grassland, he had already calculated the correct direction to leave the grassland with the art of divination. The direction he had told Jiang Qixing, Yao Xiangjuan, and the others to leave was the direction he had calculated. As long as he followed this direction, it should be very easy to leave the grassland. As long as he completely left the grassland, the Golden Ant King behind him would definitely not follow him out. It was the same with the strange flesh and blood he had encountered in the previous Blood Valley. It only guarded a certain area and was unable to cross over to other areas. Clearly, in this strange world, every geographical area had its own guardian. For example, the guardian of the Bloody Valley was the strange flesh and blood. The guardian of this grassland landscape was the terrifying Golden Ant King. Hiss! Hiss! The Golden Ant King, standing at the head of the black sword behind him, became very anxious when it realized that it had not caught up to Zhuowen. It kept hissing loudly. I'm almost there. Zhuowen did his best to activate the space-time roulette under his feet. He saw a group of mountains in the distance. He knew that it was another landscape that did not belong to the grassland. As long as he entered the mountains, the Golden Ant King would not dare to pursue him. At that time, the Golden Ant King would not be able to do anything to him. The Golden Ant King also discovered the mountains in front of it. It could not help but hiss. Golden light erupted from its body, and the countless black ants on the black sword under its feet began to wail in pain. The black sword immediately turned into a golden sword. At a closer look, the black ants that formed the sword were all burning with golden flames. Furthermore, they were wailing miserably as their presences rapidly weakened. Clearly, the Golden Ant King was sacrificing the life force of the black ants to obtain extreme speed in a short period of time. Rumble. After the black sword turned into a golden sword, its speed increased to a terrifying level. It arrived behind Zhuowen in an instant and viciously slammed into his body. Zhuowen was already prepared. He immediately used the profound creation mysterious light. Rays of profound light surrounded his body. Bang, bang, bang. Continuous explosions resounded. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and could not help but explode backwards. Countless cracks appeared on the creation mysterious light around him as it shattered. Chapter 2970. The doppelganger was destroyed. Among the countless black ant corpses, a golden light flashed out like lightning and rushed toward Zhuowen. Zhuowen did not even think about it. He summoned two sky-splitting blades and threw them toward the golden light. The moment Zhuowen threw out the sky-splitting blades, he immediately retreated and continued to rush toward the mountains behind him. The Golden Ant King was very powerful. He could not use any of his trump cards in this world. He was obviously digging his own grave if he fought the Golden Ant King head-on. The Golden Ant King spun like a golden hurricane. After breaking the two sky-splitting blades, it did not slow down and continued to chase after Zhuowen. The Golden Ant King apparently realized Zhuowen's intention. It increased its speed to the extreme. The moment Zhuowen was about to reach the border between the grassland and the mountains, it suddenly blocked in front of Zhuowen. Its terrifying attack completely crushed in front of Zhuowen. Bang! Helpless, Zhuowen unleashed several sky-splitting blades. Moreover, he continuously retreated backwards. Only then did he barely manage to cancel out the Golden Ant King's attack. At the same time, the Golden Ant King was already in front of Zhuowen. It attacked Zhuowen crazily. The terrifying golden light was like the sun hanging high in the sky, blooming with dazzling light. Zhuowen's body emitted a crystal-clear light. At the same time, he used the sky-splitting blades, the death of heaven and earth, and the mysterious light of creation. At the same time, he used the Taoist art of tyrannical slaying with both fists. Each punch and each move was very powerful. Even so, Zhuowen was still forced to retreat by the Golden Ant King. Countless cracks and patterns appeared on the surface of the peak 5-star Pangu sacred body. Boom! Zhuowen suddenly punched out, smashing into the Golden Ant King's body. Then his fist actually exploded into a mist of blood. Zhuowen, on the other hand, seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. He kept retreating, blood flowing from his mouth. Hiss! The Golden Ant King's eyes glowed. The moment Zhuowen was repelled, it immediately closed in and attacked. It opened its mouth and spat out 9 beams of golden light, which sealed all the vital parts of Zhuowen's body. The 9 beams of golden light should be the Golden Ant King's most powerful trump card. They easily broke the mysterious light of creation around Zhuowen and blasted into Zhuowen's body. Puff! The 9 golden beams of light exploded within Zhuowen's body. Next, Zhuowen's body exploded like a corpse being torn apart by 5 horses, turning into clouds of blood mist. Zhuowen only let out a muffled groan as his entire body was destroyed by the 9 beams of golden light. After Zhuowen exploded into a bloody mist, the Golden Ant King rushed to the bloody mist and kept searching. Not long after, the Golden Ant King let out an earth-shattering roar of fury. This was because it couldn't find any traces of the Buddha yellow water bamboo around Zhuowen's corpse. This made the Golden Ant King furious. It had used its trump card in the end to kill this troublesome human cultivator. Moreover, the side effects of that trump card were very severe. Now that it had paid such a huge price, it didn't find anything in the end. How could the Golden Ant King not be flustered and exasperated? The Golden Ant King searched the surroundings for a while more. It even dug 3 feet into the ground, but it still didn't find anything. The Golden Ant King roared furiously and disappeared on the spot as a beam of golden light. Not long after the Golden Ant King left, a very inconspicuous speck of dust slowly floated up from the grassland in the distance. If one didn't look closely, this speck of dust didn't look very different from the specks of dust floating in the air. The speck of dust suddenly turned into a beam of black light and disappeared on the spot. It flew toward the mountain range in front of it. When the speck of dust finally entered the mountain range, it stuck to an irregular rock. Afterwards, the surface of the speck of dust lit up with white light. Soon after, a pale-faced figure stumbled to the ground. This was Zhuowen's original body. The speck of dust was naturally the great world that Zhuowen had refined. Zhuowen's eyes flickered. His expression was not very good. He took out a large pile of Heavenly Way's origin crystals from his great world. Soon after, he tapped his forehead with his right hand and took out a strand of soul. He then placed it on the Heavenly Way's origin crystals. Immediately, strands of dense energy surged out from the pile of Heavenly Way's origin crystals and entered the strand of soul. Soon after, a human skeleton began to take shape. However, after the skeleton was formed, flesh and blood began to gradually grow on the surface of the skeleton. In the end, it formed a handsome young man. It was Zhuowen's original appearance. Sigh, in this strange world, if my clone is destroyed, it won't be able to heal on its own without the support of Heavenly Way's origin crystals. It can only do so by absorbing the energy of the Heavenly Way's origin crystals. The clone slowly opened his eyes. His eyes shone with unprecedented light and contained worry. If it were not for the fact that his great world was inconspicuous enough and that the Golden Ant King did not think that it was just his clone, he probably would have died. After the clone was healed, Zhuowen put his original body into his great world as usual. Afterwards, the clone's appearance returned to that of the young man, with 2 scars on his face. After doing all that, Zhuowen took out his communication jade talisman and sent a message to Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan. He knew that Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan should have already entered the mountainous region. As long as they were in the same region, they would definitely be able to receive the message he sent through the jade talisman. Very soon, he received a message from Jiang Qixing. However, the content of the message was rather hurried, as if they had encountered some trouble. After reading the message from Jiang Qixing, Zhuowen narrowed his eyes coldly. Soon after, he took a step forward and shot towards Jiang Qixing's location. Every mountain in this mountainous region towered into the clouds. Starting from the mountainside, there was already a white mist lingering around it. It was as ethereal as a fairyland. Zhuowen followed the mountain path and kept moving forward. Soon, he arrived in front of the tallest and largest mountain in the heart of the mountainous region. Jiang Qixing's message said that they were halfway up the mountain in the heart of the mountainous region. As for the trouble, it was said that it had something to do with Yao Xiangjuan. Zhuowen looked at the majestic mountain in front of him and leaped forward. His feet kicked repeatedly in the air at an extremely fast speed. Waves of air surged as he shot up the mountain like a rocket. At this moment, halfway up the mountain, there was a large open space. At the edge of the open space, there were several huge pine trees. In the middle of the open space, there were 2 groups of people facing each other. Zhuowen was no stranger to one of them. It was Jiang Qixing, Yao Xiangjuan, and the others. The leader of the other group was a man in white clothes and holding a folding fan. He looked very pretentious. This Jiang Qixing is very bold. If I don't teach him a lesson, I'm afraid he won't take our yin and yang divine sex seriously. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes narrowed as anger surfaced on her face. She finally understood that Yi Hanfei's claim that she had been abducted by Jiang Qixing and the others was most likely an excuse. In the end, Yihanfei's true goal was the resources on Jiang Qixing and the others. Junior sister Yao, don't be so wishy-washy. Hurry up and come here. Yihanfei was impatient when he saw Yao Xiangjuan standing there foolishly. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed at Yao Xiangjuan. Yao Xiangjuan came back to her senses and blasted Yihanfei's hand away with her jade-like palm. She let out a muffled groan and couldn't help but retreat. Fortunately, Jiang Qixing was behind her and supported her. Otherwise, Yao Xiangjuan would have been in quite a sorry state this time. Junior sister Yao, are you going to disobey my orders again? I want to ask you, are you really a disciple of our yin and yang divine sect? You've been siding with outsiders time and time again. Do you really think that I, Yihanfei, have a good temper? Yihanfei's face darkened as he glared at Yao Xiangjuan, who was being supported by Jiang Qixing. Jiang Qixing was furious and said, Yihanfei, aren't you going too far? Junior sister Yao is your junior sister. How can you do this to her? Yihanfei didn't care at all and said, I only need junior sisters who listen to me. As for junior sisters who don't listen to me, they're like strangers to me. Do you think I'll show mercy to strangers? At this point, Yihanfei became even more impatient and said coldly, Jiang Qixing, I've been very polite to you. Now hand over your spirit rings. Otherwise, don't blame me for attacking you. Senior brother Jiang, let's fight it out with them. If we hand over our spirit rings, won't we be waiting for death? Rather than waiting for death, we might as well fight them to the death. A male cultivator beside Jiang Qixing said angrily. The other members of Jiang Qixing's team were also furious. Yihanfei was really going too far. Asking them to hand over their spirit rings was akin to cutting off their own path of retreat. Jiang Qixing raised his right hand and motioned for his team to be quiet. Then he looked at Yihanfei. Yihanfei smiled and looked at Jiang Qixing. He said indifferently, Jiang Qixing, you should know the gap between your team and mine. Not to mention the team's strength. Just your strength alone is far from mine. What do you have to fight us? At this point, Yihanfei's eyes suddenly turned cold. He said, if I were you, I would have obediently handed over my spirit rings to avoid a fatal disaster instead of encouraging my team members to die. Yihanfei, we're indeed weaker than you, but I'm afraid it won't be that easy for you to take us down. Jiang Qixing snorted coldly and pinched the void with his right hand to take out a long sword. However, the luster on the surface of the long sword was dim. It had obviously lost the divinity that a divine artifact should have. After all, divine artifacts were almost no different from ordinary objects in this world. Yihanfei's eyes turned cold. He said, it seems that you really intend to fight us. In that case, don't blame us for being impolite. Kongcheng, kill them all. Leave no one alive. After saying that, Yihanfei's aura suddenly erupted, and he flew toward Jiang Qixing like a furious dragon. Jiang Qixing was not afraid. He stepped on the Big Dipper, and the long sword in his hand swept out like flowing water. Bang, bang, bang. In just an instant, Yihanfei and Jiang Qixing engaged in a fierce battle. Both of them were Genesis stage experts, so the aftermath of their battle was very terrifying. However, both of them knew that this world could not replenish their heavenly energy, so they did not use large-scale techniques that consumed a lot of energy during the battle. Even so, Jiang Qixing soon fell into a disadvantage. After all, his cultivation was only at the early stage Genesis stage, while Yihanfei was already at the late-stage Genesis stage. The gap between the two of them was not small. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.